Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of the Storytellers. Tonight, we are honoring a legend, a man who is one of the greatest storytellers that this business has ever seen. It's a short list of people that are his peers, and there's nobody better. So that kind of tells you a little bit about the level of greatness that JOE KUBERT holds unto himself. Tonight we're going to go over some of Joe's work, talk about his career a little bit, and I've got some guests in the waiting room here that I'll introduce in a sec. That knew Joe, fellow QBs. I've sent invitations out to some other folks that work with Joe, and we'll see who shows up. But we got a couple guys in the back room here ready to talk everything Joe, if you will. So everybody in the chat, let me just say a quick hello to who I see here. Kevin Wolf, Dr. Mask is here, Hyper Kaiju, Past Master Dan, hello, hello, hello. Joe Bernardo, hello. Brian Pomfrey, hello. Son of Liberty Radio, who says, hail Comicsgate, hail, hail. Let's Leg Kick 1. Yeah, there's a whole crowd here. Joe Bernardo. Excellent, excellent. We got a lot of love here. Lee Johnson, Kevin Morang. Hello, everybody. Let me introduce you to a couple of folks here that are fellow QBs of mine. First, let me just introduce Sergio Cariello. Hello, Sergio.
How you doing, Graham?
I am very well, thank you. Sergio, if you don't know his work, a prolific artist, amazing storyteller, who studied at the feet of JOE KUBERT and was actually a teacher at the KUBERT School as well. We also have Patrick Johnny Phantasm 93.
What's up, guys? Hey, Sergio. Sergio was actually my drawing instructor, my figure drawing instructor at the KUBERT School.
Is that right?
That's right.
Oh, wow. I love that. It just keeps giving back, right?
Yeah.
And what year were you there, Patrick?
I graduated in 2004.
Okay. And what year did you graduate, Sergio?
It was 91, something like that. I didn't do all 3 years.
Right. Oh, you're like me, so you didn't graduate.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there in 90 or 90. I was there in 81, 82. And then I took a year off, and then 83, 84.
Yeah, I was in 86, 87, and I went back in 1990. But then I got this opportunity to work in the Marvel bullpen, so I took that in the second year, and but I went back to teach. So I stayed working at the school for 7 years before moving to Florida and work at CrossGen.
Right. Okay, so let's share the screen here. That's me and Joe at the Reuben Awards in 2010.
Wow.
Now, I think Joe passed in 2013? 2012. Okay, so this is 2 years before his passing. And I went to this Reuben Awards strictly because we were honoring Joe at the Reubens there. And I hadn't seen him in years. And it was in Jersey City. And I decided I was going to go to that. I'm so glad that I did.
That's awesome.
Yeah, just that was a great time. But let's show some. This is that one I was telling you about, Sergio.
All right.
This piece, I'll blow it up in a sec, guys, appears to be an original concept piece. It's dated 1971. So this was around the time that DC Comics got the rights from who had Gold Key, I think had Tarzan prior to this. And so DC acquired the rights. And if you look at the notation here, it says the real Tarzan the Ape Man, once again, Lord of the Jungles, as devised and created by ERB, written and drawn in the manner that stirred the original readers almost 50 years ago. Starting with the origin of Tarzan, how he grew up in the deepest jungle, the adopted son of a gorilla mother. I just found this when I was looking for some of Joe's work, and I thought this was really cool. I've never seen this before.
Really awesome.
Yeah, have you ever seen this, Patrick?
No, I didn't. At first glance, I thought it was Tor.
Yeah, it looks like his evolution of the character, hadn't started yet. It looks like an early attempt at Tarzan, and not quite. He nailed the ape like he always does, but his Tarzan looks like it still evolved a little bit from this first sketch.
Like something that I do notice in this drawing that Joe used to always tell me, it's the feet of Tarzan here. He didn't finish the toes, and like sometimes I would bring him my drawings and my sketches, and he would say sometimes you're drawing too much. He's like, you have to let the reader fill in the blanks sometimes. You don't have to draw every single toe for a person to know that's a foot. Right. And it's like, it's very much so like when you're reading a novel and your imagination kind of fills in the blanks. Right. He would say leave some stuff open for the reader to fill in on their own. And I see that in this drawing.
And I can testify to that, because I asked Joe that very same question. I said, Joe, why don't you finish the feet? And he told me exactly that, because I allowed the reader to fill in for me, so I don't put extraneous lines and detail all over the place. And it is the something that Scott McCloud teaches in his books on allowing the viewer in by not setting everything on the stage, but leaving some things for the reader to fill in.
Yeah, and what Joe also does is that he puts the detail where he wants you to look. He doesn't want you looking at these feet. He doesn't want you to marvel at the fact that every toenail is delineated. He wants you to focus right up in here, and this is where the money shot is. Right. All the detail in that face.
Yeah, I mean, look at Tarzan's face, the expression on it. It's like every line means something there.
And his black placement too, to pop the figure out, is just fantastic.
Well, he studied Hal Foster, and he was greatly influenced by Foster's Tarzan. And you can spot some panels that he emulated Foster on. Original Tarzan.
Yeah, Buscema too. When Buscema was doing Tarzan, I've always loved this page. I think it's quintessential Joe. It's powerful, it's dynamic, it's clear.
It's perfect.
That's the word I'm looking for, Patrick. It's perfect.
Yeah, but when he did text the Italians, Sergio Bonelli, asked and begged him, please don't do inserts. Please don't do that on text. Only tears.
Yeah.
Because Joe started doing panels that came from the top to bottom, and they freaked out. They said the Italians will not get it. Please just do like comic strips,
Right.
one tier on top of the other.
Right.
And Joe complied because Joe was very busy when he took text. He didn't want to do it, but Irvin convinced him by going to New Jersey several times, because Irvin and Joe were friends, and they did facts from Sarajevo together. And he was the main character on that book. And Irvin also did Abraham Stone with Joe Kubert.
Okay.
Irvin Rustamagic, the guy from Facts from Sarajevo. Do you know that book?
I know the Facts from Sarajevo. Yeah, is that who that was? Okay.
Yeah. That guy owned the rights to text. Internationally. Okay. Yeah. So the Sergio Bonelli were friends with Irvin, and they said, "Can you please convince Joe to do one book of text for us?" And Joe was busy with the school, busy with creating the correspondence courses upcoming. Also drawing books, doing covers. So he said, "No, I don't want it." So Irvin went several times to New Jersey trying to convince Joe. And Joe finally accepted in the condition that very loose deadline. So he took 7 years to do that book.
7?
7 years.
Wow. Yeah. I have some images from that. Since we're talking about it, let me jump ahead to that. Well, actually, let's break this piece down a little bit first. We talked about his ability to leave stuff out. He only puts detail in where it's necessary. And you look at this background here, there's trees back there, but there's plenty of white space surrounding Tarzan here. So he pops off to you. He doesn't get cluttered. The plane crashing, he's got all these different layers going across it to add depth to the drawing as well. You've got these 3 different planes of depth and then you got the gorilla back here. It's 2 of them actually. It's just I can stare at this damn piece all day long.
Yeah, and something else that's genius about this is, so we're reading the panel from left to right, then it goes to the face of Tarzan, and then the crash. So it's kind of like a Z formation of how your eye travels, and then it goes to the Tarzan logo down the bottom. It's like he's telling the reader exactly where to go. And it's interesting because it's not often that you go from right to left in comic books, because we want people, but here there's an exciting situation that's happening. So what he does is he makes the plane crash from right to left because he wants the viewer really to pay attention to this situation. I mean, again, it's perfect.
Yeah, it's like you imagine watching a movie and the camera goes right into whatever's going on the first second, those 3 inserts. But then you imagine the camera moving out and around this world of jungle and monkeys and ape man and the plane crashing, and your eyes go back around watching the whole thing, and then the title moves in. So it's like a movie set.
Well, Joe's work to me is one of the most cinematic of any, certainly of his contemporaries, and of anybody in the business, I would say as well. It's cinematic without ever forgetting that it's comics.
Right.
A lot of the problems with comics today is that everybody wants to make it a movie, and they don't embrace the art form of cartooning in such a way that you can do things you can't do in movies. There's aspects to it that you should embrace and enjoy. And Joe was like the marriage of both worlds. It feels like a movie because it's so clearly told, and it hits all 3 of those precepts of mine about storytelling. It's clarity, dynamics, and immersion. And Joe's storytelling is clear, it's dynamic, and it immerses you into the story.
Yeah.
All right, so we were talking about text. So let me pull up a couple text images. This one is just freaking amazing to me. This page is so much heart. It's heartbreaking, and it's just again, there's nothing here you don't need. There's no extraneous backgrounds here. You know, the focus is on this guy and this little dog. You know, Joe gets the guns right, and this. Look at this. Oh my God, that is so great.
Yeah. Time stops right there, right?
It sure does.
The puppy.
Yeah.
You're suffering with you're angry at the villain.
Right.
Yeah.
What villain is worse than one that kills a puppy? You know, I mean, they made the whole John Wick movies about that.
Yeah.
You know,
and the desperation of the character at the last panel going towards where he heard the shot.
Right.
Yeah, it's enticing.
This is something that Joe does really well too. And the more I study his work, the more I see it.
And you see on this page that he's already complying to Sergio Bonelli's request.
Yes.
Years.
Yeah. And you know what? For anybody else, that could be a hindrance, because there's a lot of guys that use page layouts as a way to hide their shortcomings as far as, you know, their drawing that they're going to put in panels. Whereas a master like Joe, he doesn't need that. He just prefers to tell the story that way and open it up and make it more dramatic. But he can certainly work within the grid format here, and as we see here, emotionally and effectively. And
he did many strips, like the Green Beret, Winkle.
Yeah, Winnie Winkle.
And some others. I've seen his work in several strips, and so he was used to this storyboarding style storytelling.
Well, you know, even his early comic book work, you know, before he'd started breaking out of panels and barriers, was like this, more traditional.
That's right.
Because
he worked under Will Eisner, so the guy's all over the place. I mean, he did everything since he was 12. You know. Yeah.
There's three guys to me that are the best at conveying a sense of depth. Like you can see here how he's got that house in the background, and he's got these levels of planes going back. There's really 4 levels here. We have the horse,
right?
And again, he has the white of the ground coming up to the unfinished foot going into the horse. Then you have the next plane of the guy, and then in the background you've got the house, which is delineated in a lighter way so that it adds depth. And where I was going with this is that the 3 guys that really can kill that sense of depth are Joe Kubert, Nick Carty, and Ross Andrew. You know, when you want a guy up in a plane or parachuting out, and you see the ground and the distance and stuff like that, those 3 guys can nail that kind of stuff like nobody's business.
Yeah,
this is. I got to get this book. I don't own this book, so I definitely got to get it.
Yeah, I'll give you some links.
Okay, great. Look at this. Oh, there's that puppy.
Yeah, that's before he gets killed.
Yeah. Well, either that or he's a ghost.
Yeah, but that's page 1, I think.
Look at this. Again, the sense of depth. Here we have the rock in the foreground with solid black. The next rock behind it, a little bit lighter. And then you've got
the little tiny person. I remember Joe used to always tell me, you know, like in a page where you have 3 panels, you always want like a far shot, a mid shot, and a close up. Always, you want to give the reader a good selection of depth and images to look at. And if you get a close, a medium shot, and a pullback shot, then you cover everything.
Yeah. Hey, we got another guest who wants to pop in here. Let's introduce Mr. Lee Weeks.
Lee Weeks.
No stranger to storytelling. Hello, Lee.
Hey, Graham, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Glad you can make it, bud.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
I'm not sure if I've done one of these since you and I did the...
Oh, really?
Storytellers. I don't remember if I've done one since.
Well, welcome back to the Storytellers. As we honor that teacher of ours, the great JOE KUBERT.
Yeah, I love that. I was just backstage listening to the talk on the puppy dog page. That was pretty. Pretty.
Do you have this book, Lee?
No, no. What is it? Text?
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah. I don't think I do. Sometimes I say I don't have stuff. And it's been in the shelf so long. My middle-aged memory doesn't. I need some more.
Right. Yeah, I when I was looking for images to talk about here, I came across some of the tech stuff, and I kept telling myself every year, I got to get that book. I got to get that book. Well, now I've seen these pages. I got to get this book. So Sergio's going to hook me up with some links, and I'm gonna get this thing because I love Westerns, obviously, and this stuff is just. We were just talking about Joe's sense of depth here, like in this top panel, how he can just draws you into this. It's so naturalistic looking, and yet it has so much different layers, and it's just drawn so well.
And another thing that's interesting that I want to point out is how the line work from the shadows from the rock lead into panel 2. You know, like the direction of the energy is going down that hill with the shadows and leading the eye. And then panel 1 is straight across, so you go straight across the panel 2, 3, and 4, and then that skyline that is in the bottom panel kind of leads you from the face of panel 4 into the bottom panel, and then that fence leads you into the dog, which leads you into the girl, that leads you to the house. It's just, I mean, it's again, it's like every line makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the camera moves too. The angles, you know, the panoramic to begin with to establish the shot, and then going intimate with text, and then worm's eye view at the last to focus on the dog and what's about to happen to him in the next page, or the next pages.
Let me ask you guys, was there anything you remember specifically when you were at the school, something that Joe said to you that stuck with you your entire career? Was there any kind of words of wisdom or thing that he said to you that you put into your little memory bank and said, you know, I got to hold on to this. This is gold.
I've got something off the top of my head.
Okay, Patrick, go ahead.
So like I remember first year I was staying late, and I was doing a page, and I had one of those like perspective grid sheets, and I had it on top of a light box, and I was using it for my guidance because I wasn't really that great at perspective quite yet, you know. And I was the only one in the classroom. Like school was done, and I was losing a light box. And Joe walked past, and then he saw that I came back, and he came back and talked to me, and he saw that I was using the grid, and he was like, "Oh, he's like that's interesting." He's like, "That's really smart," and he's like, and I was like, "Well, well, how do you do it, Joe?" And he's like, "One day, kiddo," he's like, "You'll just see it." He's like, "You'll just see the grid, you know." It kind of like Neo in the Matrix when he sees like all the numbers, and I mean, and I see it now, you know, and I always remember that whenever I'm doing like an establishing shot and I see the grid in my head, I always remember that conversation that I had with him.
I remember the panel when that happened to me.
What's that mean?
You're talking about perspective? Perspective grid? I can remember the page in the panel I was working on when it went blink. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't need to use. I was doing an interior with a bunch of furniture. Everything was turned to different angles. So that means there would have been a myriad of vanishing points pairs. And I didn't need it. I could just replace it. And I was like, oh, I could see that. And I mean, if it's a high, if it's a cityscape or something like that, I'm likely going to at least rough it in.
Right.
But no, it really was like a light switch. I could show you the panel that I was working on. It was a 3/4 down shot of an apartment in the new wave, that grand old eclipse highlight. But yeah.
How about you, Sergio?
I used to go to Joe's office constantly. I would knock on the door, and the guy was so generous to me. And Debbie Kubert, I would check with her first, and I said, "Is he there?" Yeah, go ahead. You can knock. And then he would come on in, and I would show pages that I was working on. I was doing Dagon, and I never forget that he took one of the pages that I was working on, and then this guy was approaching a bookshelf. And he told me, in order for you to add depth to this character approaching the shelf, why don't you cast a shadow on the bookshelf of him approaching? That way, you're linking, the elements together, and you're creating this depth. And that stuck to me forever. I used it, of course, but I remember him putting tracing paper over some of my pages and giving me tips on stuff. But that, and when I asked him about the feet, that stuck in my head.
Right.
When I asked Joe, because I remember from the 70s when I was a kid, and I got to appreciate him as I got older. But something that I always wanted to ask Joe, whenever I have a chance to meet the guy, I'm going to ask him, why don't you draw the feet in detail and stuff? And he told me why he told Patrick. Yeah, you have to allow the reader to fill in for what you don't put in. If you put everything in, the reader becomes so bored already, and he cannot participate in the page. So if you leave some things out,
right?
So the one of the phrases he uses is like, what do you decide not to put in as more important, if not as same importance, or if not, or maybe more important than what you decide to put in.
Right.
What you decide to leave out is more important sometimes what you decide to put in. Something
right.
Like that.
Yeah, it's so true. Let me just bring in another guest here. We got my professional buddy, Billy Tucci.
Billy Tucci.
Billy.
What's up, fellas? I'm just sitting there like this, nodding my head.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you, my friend. It's great to see you guys. Look at these legends here. Look at this. Man.
So we're having fun talking about Big Joe. You know, one of the things I always remember about Joe is his handshake. Joe was a man's man. And,
that's a man's handshake.
Yeah. He wasn't that big a guy, but he had this presence. I think he was probably 5'11", maybe. Would you say 5'11"? 6 foot, maybe? Something like
he
that.
was smaller than me.
But he's
5'9".
When I had him, he was like 5'10" and a half, 5'11". He was older.
Yeah. But he was always a big, stocky Polish build, and he had a hand grip on him that was like, put your hand in a vice.
Yeah.
He played racquetball. So the guy had this real presence about him.
Yes.
He had a set of mitts on him too, though.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got twinky fingers and stuff, and Yeah,
I mentioned that to a forum that honors Joe stuff, and I talked about exactly that, how Joe respected not only in the classroom, but in the offices of DC, wherever he went. And whenever I was watching, I could see that he had this presence that demanded respect. And,
Yeah.
and he had that on him.
And Joe, as friendly as he was, did not suffer fools. If you asked a stupid question, or somebody interviewing him, maybe asked something that was too personal or too intrusive, he would shut you down in a second. And
I asked him. I was very naive, fresh student coming to the school, and I asked Joe, "So Joe, what is your page rate?" And he said, "That's none of your business." Right, like that. And I learned so much from that. So, wow, that's none of my business.
When you ask the question, what do you remember that has stuck with you? The first, I wrote down 3 quick little things. I mean, there are many things that have stayed with me, but the first 3 things that came to mind was storytelling over drawing. I just remember being in the class in the mansion in the top floor when that you could draw the prettiest pictures in the world, and it matters not if you can't tell the story.
Yeah, right.
2 was if you get the faces and hands right, you can kind of get by in the other stuff, which I'm not saying originates with him, but that's the first place I heard it. And I have to refer to my notes. The other one that was really helpful was, and this isn't, I don't consider any of these like 100% rules, but very helpful tools though. You have one image, one panel on the page that's dominant and subordinate everything else to it, so that it's usually that importance is created through size, but not always. I think there are other ways to do it, but just not as frequently. But to think of it helps create that cohesive feel to the page where it feels like one thing, because you have a dominant, like a big planet and a bunch of little moons. But
one of the things I remember him saying, we were talking about detail, like putting in too much detail. I remember a student came up to him and showed him the work of a comic artist that was known for a lot of detail. And he had this big splash page and every little thing was delineated and all this. And the guy was so proud of it. He just, because he loved this guy. And he's like, "Oh, hey, what do you think of this, Joe? What do you think of this?" And Joe looks at it and goes, "Well, he's patient." And just like that, then the guy's like,
I think I may have told you, Graham, that early on, I probably in 89 or 90, when I had just been at Marvel just a little while, a few years, I met my hero was John Buscema growing up, and I met him in Ramita's office, Ramita Senior's office, and I was pretty starstruck, but engaged him in conversation and mentioned that when I mentioned that I had gone to the Kubert School for a year, he just got this like, and I saw this, John Buscema, big, and just a giant in my eyes, and he just all of a sudden got this, oh man, like that guy is perfect. And that's what he said about. I said, what? I was a little startled that John Buscema would speak so reverentially of Joe. He says, he says everything he does, because there's never one line too many, never one line too few. It's perfect. And then I think he might have thrown an expletive in there, but called me out of love. But it just impressed me so much that he was like genuine awe.
Right.
Genuine awe that he had such an appreciation.
It's astonishing.
Walt, are you there?
I seem to be, but I'm having some computer trouble.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
My picture isn't showing up on my screen.
Is that Hal?
I think we see the eye of Ragnarok.
That might be it.
I think Did you turn your camera on when you first log in?
I did, but my computer suddenly shut down. I had to restart some stuff. So maybe I'll re-enter the link and start over again.
Are you using Chrome?
My camera was working for 5 seconds. And if I don't come back, it's great to see all you guys.
Well, we hope you
We
do.
can't say the same thing,
Come
though.
back with your voice. We don't have to see you.
Well, there you go. All right.
He's a beautiful man. We got to see his face.
Yeah, I met Joe Buscema at the Marvel Bullpen, Lee. And what a privilege to see that man. I was like, no way. That's John Buscema right there.
There he is.
I have the cheesiest. I'm lying on my sofa in my living room. I have no real lighting. I'm sorry. This isn't my normal métier.
This is the no judgment zone, Walt. So
that's good.
He's got a big old mug of gin though that he's not showing anybody.
Yeah, we all have white hair.
I have my
my
rattlesnake mug. So
that's cool. That's very cool.
This actually helps.
It's with some bromide and gin in it.
Well, it helps a little. There we go. That's the best I got, guys.
Yeah, and Walt have
Perfect.
outlived us all. He knows not only Joe, but probably you knew the ones who influenced Joe.
Who is that?
You probably met guys that we never could meet because you've been doing this for so long that you probably
Older than dirt.
Sergio is politely saying you're old, Walt. That's what
Who do you think? Who did inspire Joe? Was it Toth or something? Like who?
No. No, Joe preceded Toth.
Oh, that's right. So you're talking like the greats.
He loved
Foster, right?
Foster, yeah. Foster.
Yeah. But you know who really helped mentor him too was Mort Meskin.
That was the name I was trying to think of. Yeah, Mort Meskin.
Yeah, Mort Meskin and Jerry Robinson in that group really helped mentor Joe into that studio system when he first started.
Did you ever work with Joe, Walt?
No, but I had a funny. I had some street cred with Joe. I mean, I knew Joe from the DC offices when I came to New York. I came to New York in '72, and so back then, as all of you would probably know, you had to go up to the offices to turn your pages in. So you kind of met anybody who was in New York City, old guys, young guys. So I got to know Joe. I learned not to shake his hand if I didn't have to.
We covered that.
We just covered it.
Okay, well, I learned that the hard way. But I was at a convention. I don't remember which one now. It might have been one on the West Coast, but it's been a long time. And Joe asked me if I would critique Adam and Andy's work for him.
Wow.
And so they were young. I don't remember how old they were now. High school tops and maybe a little younger. I don't remember their work. I don't remember what I said to them. Mostly if I look at somebody's work, I try to find something good to say about it, which sometimes you have to scrabble to get that to come out right. And I try to find maybe two things that I think they could work on to be better. If there's 40 things and you list all 40, they're never going to go anywhere. They'll never be able to capture it all. So I try to find a couple of things. So I'm assuming that's what I did for the boys. But whatever I did, I felt that after that I had a lot of street cred with Joe, that he was very pleased at whatever I had told them. And I probably told them what he had told them, except that they wouldn't believe him. But I'm just guessing about that. It's your dad. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed Joe's work. I love Joe. You guys may have said this already, and maybe not. I'll say this. I have to go work soon myself. I got to go back to the drawing board. But one of the things about Joe's stuff that completely blew me away, it still blows me away, and I still find it really annoying. And that is when he does covers, he is able to compress space on a cover in some way that he can get large figures and large vistas and great depth, and everything's right in front of you. And I don't know how the hell he does it. It's really irritating. But he was able to compose the covers so beautifully that everything, it was clear, it was dramatic, and it was somehow everything worked so well, and yet nothing was in the distance.
Yeah.
It all seemed. Oh, I may actually have had a story on that issue. A
Really?
backup story of some kind.
There you go.
Maybe
This
it
is a-
might
this is a
possibly
perfect-
a captain.
This is a perfect example, Walt, of what you're saying. I remember seeing this cover, and it just blew me away. You know, I was into, superhero comics, but I saw this thing, and the drama, the focal points here, the sense of space, just blew me away, and I still am in awe of this cover. I mean, his perspective from water line, so that you could see both things. The guy's about to jump in, and there's the shark underneath, and the light rays going through the water, and then the mines. Like you get a feeling of this rolling ocean that they're on, and all those mines there. It's just, it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Like just all stuff.
Like the
Mind
shadow,
blowing, mind blowing.
like the shadow being cast from the boat underneath the water that kind of makes the shark head pop out, and then the dark from the inside of the mouth, bringing the viewer in.
Mm-hmm. And
like I told you, really annoying.
Yeah. when I was a first year student at that time at the Kubert School, at that time Joe was not teaching first year anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to Joe. Joe, would you talk to our class? And said, if you get 20 guys to sign a petition, I'll do it. And then after the school hours, we sat with Joe for 4 hours.
Wow.
And he showed us all these original covers and pages and some stuff. Like I recorded everything with a clunky VHS recording thing, and it was barely recorded, and the sound was horrible. But I asked Joe permission to post on YouTube all the 6 parts of me filming, asking questions, and the students asking. And those moments to me were the most amazing jaw dropping of my interactions with Joe, because we would ask questions while drooling over all his art, but he had plastic covering them, so we didn't drool over it. But it was a fantastic learning experience to be able to see the originals up close.
Yeah, because he could fit a whole tank or an aircraft, and then full figure of, say, Rock or someone standing in the foreground. And like, how the hell do you fit the whole tank and the whole airplane, or if someone's in the haunted tank with an airplane coming in ready to crash in on it?
Right.
Just you talk about
somebody
selling a
in the
book.
foreground has a bazooka firing with the tank.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, I had this. I got another image here. I'll share as soon as I find. I got so many. That's not it. Hold on a second here.
And Joe was doing so many covers when he was an editor and teaching at the school. And I have boxes and boxes of Joe's covers, a comic book with his covers on. It's nonstop. He I don't know how many covers he's done, but thousands of covers over his time.
Now, this image I'm about to show, it covers a couple bases that we talked about. One was Joe's sense of depth and how he could make you feel like something is very far and away. And then the other part is his incredible cinematic storytelling. And this is
yeah.
Yeah. That's gorgeous. That is
look at
gorgeous.
that.
And that's a decade ago, right?
Yeah, this is later in Joe's career. I mean,
yeah.
I was actually in his class when he was working on this book.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Look at the shadowing, the lighting sources here, and again, this is that space, that background. You get the impression of depth.
Oh yeah.
And then
very dramatic lighting.
Yeah. And
What's interesting is, so when we're looking at the inside of this airplane, with the wires and stuff like that, like there should be a lot of details, but he chose to leave those details out and put them in the city because he doesn't want you looking at that frame. He wants you to be aware of the frame, but he wants you to be aware of all those little tiny buildings that these guys are jumping into.
Where they're going, yeah.
And look at how some of these parachutes are completely open, and you don't see the strings. And then here's one that's in the process of opening.
Yeah,
that's just a tiny little bit of business, as they say, that adds texture to the drawing itself, I think.
and then the hand going up to the right, grabbing the edge of the airplane, and then that panel starts right there and brings you down.
Yeah, leads you right to it. Yep.
Yeah, and then you follow the flow of the parachutes as they come down, and it draws your eye straight down. There's absolutely no way you could get confused with this, what is a very detailed looking drawing, and yet it's not. There's so much open there for the eye to fill in and for the eye to see. That's the magic that this guy had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a privilege looking at it.
Yeah. And let me tell you, Graham, I don't know if you've seen the Army Maintenance magazine that Joe took over. Will Leslie used to do those. Yeah. And
PS, right? PS magazine?
The PS magazine, yeah. So they asked Neil Adams to do it, and Neil didn't have time to do it. So Neil convinced Joe to do it. And Joe was already busy. He didn't have time to, but he's done, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40-ish, and he did short comic books stories within those PS magazines. Yeah. And you were able to download everything from the PS site. And they are amazing, even tiny little things, because he didn't do, 11 by 17. He did really small, probably to size. But all his knowledge and storytelling tricks are in those short stories. No matter how big or small. If Thor was huge, right? Then most of the stories they went down to 11 by 17. I don't know if Walt did large pages beyond 11 by 17. Have you ever done pages bigger?
I did one job that I did twice up. It was a fantasy job that Michael Moorcock wrote, and Michael puts a lot into his scripts, and I wanted to be able to get as much in there as I could. They were 44 or 48 page comics, probably 44, and I felt that I could have done each issue. It was 4 issues. I could have done them as 96-page stories, and you still wouldn't have gotten everything in, but I was limited. So I wanted to have as much room to cram as much in as I could manage one way. Now, I was not trying to be George. I figured I couldn't be George Perez, but I still wanted to get a lot in there. And so I worked twice up, and I found that I was probably more than twice as slow filling up those pages. So I didn't stay with twice up. I mean, now with scanning, you could do pages whatever size you want, but back then it was more difficult. But it was still fun to do. I really love doing it. I've got some nice large pages.
Yeah, I did twice up on when I worked on the Prowler for Eclipse Comics. The whole premise was this was supposed to be a 1940s comic that was published during the day. So we did the artwork in that same format, that twice up, and it was a bitch trying to get photocopies of the artwork, so I would have, black and white copies,
And today we don't have to worry about mailing, but back then, Romita Sr. and all the war books, they were huge pages. They were humongous pages, and they had to ship them, right?
Yeah, or bring them into the...
Probably depends on where they lived. Mostly, I mean, like when I got into comics, most of the guys who did comics lived either in the city or close by. I don't know how John Buscema sent his pages in. He was out in somewhere, Port Jefferson or something like that, Long Island, North Shore of Long Island, I think. But all the guys that I knew and all the people I knew pretty much went into the office as I did and turned your pages in rather than try to mail them. With twice up pages, I don't know how that would have worked.
Was that sort of like a day off for you when you would come into the city and then like have lunch with an editor? Maybe like, was it a big deal, or did you get in early and get out?
Really, all my days are days off. They're all day. I have no days on. I'm off all the time.
He's finally admitted it, people.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, it was, you know, what it meant was, again, I talked about this a little bit. The 70s and the 80s in comics for us, and the mid 80s, were really a golden period. I mean, I've made more money in other periods of comics. I've made less. Well, not much less than the early 70s. But it meant that you came in, you saw everybody. One of the things I really miss from those days is going into the office, because I was in the office in 72 or 73 at DC when Alex Toth's Burma Skies job came in.
Oh,
Wow.
Now, he was in California. Obviously, he mailed it. I didn't see the package. But the pages came into the office. I was there, and they were not covered in plastic. We still managed not to drool on them. But seeing them and seeing, he had like probably used a Pentel that was running out of juice to fuzz the edge of the shadow line along Japanese bombers. It gave kind of a textured feel to it, almost like a halftone, but rougher. And it was seeing the work early on when I first got there. Bernie Wrightson was doing Swamp Thing with Len. And I don't know, the third or fourth issue of Swamp Thing, I can't remember now exactly, fifth maybe, it's pretty early. There was a werewolf story. And in the werewolf story, there's a full page interior splash of the werewolf standing on his haunches and growling, and there's a guy's head in the foreground. I mean, if you look at it carefully, the guy's head in the foreground, the guy was clearly standing in a hole in the floor.
Right.
His head was low. But, you know, it didn't matter. It looked fabulous.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of zipatone, a lot of tone work on it.
Yeah.
And to see stuff like that, work that Michael Kaluta was bringing in, or Chaykin, it was inspiring. It was deflating. It made you want to go back and go, God damn it. And you had to go back to your own desk and go back to work. And seeing all that stuff in person was just spectacular. When we began doing internet, scans and sending scans in, early on, DC had an arrangement where you had a folder, and you went somewhere where whatever the website was, but they had a list of 500 folders of every artist. The Lee Weeks, the Billy Tucci's, all that stuff was listed there. And I went there. I went, God damn! And I opened folders and looked at people's artwork, and I said, "This is fabulous! I can see what these guys are doing." And then I was told, "Oh no, you're not supposed to go into anybody else's folder. Shame on you! You have to stay out." And I went, "What's the point? It's all right." And then they redid everything, so now you can't see anybody else's folder. But I was thrilled for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I remember that. That's
Hey,
right.
Salty Teacher, thank you for the $5 super chat. They wanted to say, I love you, Walt Simonson. I grew up reading your work on Fantastic Four and X Factor. Thank you for comics. There's two other super chats I missed.
They're at least as good as I am and maybe better.
Walt, have you worked on the studio with other creators?
Hold on a sec, but I just got to get this out that I missed two other super chats here. And they've scrolled off my screen. So I don't want you to think oh, wait, here we go. Bob Gable, $4.99. Thank you for that, sir. Do you agree with Malin that Fragaboom didn't leave enough room for word balloons? Well, I refuse to answer that because you're pitting professionals against each other. But thanks for the super chat.
They were very small little bits of dialogue.
Yeah, we haven't seen the dialogue yet, so we don't know.
And also, the colorist can kind of push back some of that line weight too. So,
right,
we're not there yet.
And there was one more super chat which I can't find right now. I'll try to locate it, and but thank you so much, guys. All right, so back to it.
Didn't the guys in the 70s do the lettering and everything? Like Jim Aparo did the lettering.
Yeah, Jim was rare though. He
was rare.
Yeah.
I mean, the story about Jim seemed to be that he would get up in the morning, he'd have a blank page, and when he finished his work in the late afternoon at 5 o'clock, whatever time he finished, he had an ink lettered page complete.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
That was what he produced every day.
I think Joe used to letter his own pages, right? Years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Did he?
Yeah. And then I think I could be mistaken here, but I think
Frank letters his now. and has for quite at least in Sin City. I don't know about Ronin, but I think from Sin City on, he's been lettering his own stuff.
I remember a great story about that Neil Adams tells about how he went into the city when Joe was one of those editors up at DC, and a cover was due, and Neil went in for lunch and to have a lunch date and with some editors and stuff, and Joe was supposed to go, but this cover came due, and so they went out to lunch, and Joe worked on the cover. They came back from lunch, and Joe had this entire cover inked from the time those guys went to lunch with a lettering nib. He didn't have any other tools there to work with, and he did this whole damn thing with a lettering nib and a brush.
Yeah.
Well, that's what he inked with, right?
Right.
A speedball D and yeah.
I think that's what Mignola uses as well.
Crazy.
God, I'm hoping my wife isn't watching this.
I remember I had Joe for third year, and for all our assignments we had to letter everything, and at this time is when computer lettering was coming into effect, and like we were always complaining like why are we doing hand lettering, Joe? It's like the computers do it, and he was just like, you never know when you're going to be in a bind. He's like, you can't rely on the computer. He's like, you might be in a situation where you have to do something really quick, and you have to know how to letter, And
that's the philosophy of the Kubert School, from Joe's mind. You got to be able to do everything in it, in order to be able to get out of a jam if necessary, or get different jobs because different openings are.
Well, I'll tell you right now, especially, like the stuff that I've been doing recently that's all creator owned. I've never used the tools that I learned at the Kubert School more than I ever have in these past couple of years, because I do everything, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it's like everything is coming into effect now. And something else that, that Joe said to me, because, it's like when I went to school there was really good students, and then there was really not so good students, and then there was a lot in the middle. And he would give those students that weren't very good just as much attention as the guys that were good. And I asked him, I was like, like what about so and so? And he was like, Patrick, he's like, one day he's gonna get it. He might be driving in a car, he might be working on a painting, but one day these things are gonna click. I'm gonna fill his head with this stuff, and one day it's all gonna make sense to him.
I got a funny story to tell that's very dovetails right on what you're talking about, Patrick. Is that yes, there's always a hierarchy. You know who your students are that are probably going to make it, and then the ones that probably aren't. And at the Kubert School, Walt, they used to do after his assignments, you would have a critique, and everybody would pin their assignments up on the wall, and Joe would stand there, and the class would be here, and the class could offer critiques, and then Joe would offer a critique about what was up there. And this one guy, he put his stuff up, and it was very clearly this guy was one of those guys that just wasn't going to make it. It was just really, really awful looking. And Joe, being the consummate educator, he stares at it. He's just looking at it like this. And the class is silent. And he goes, "That is a hell of an attempt."
That's awesome. That's so wise.
So the class ends, right? And we go back to our classrooms, and I was with some of my friends and stuff, and I started doing the impression of Joe, and I'm there doing this, and then I hit the funny line, and nobody's laughing, right? And I turn and I look behind me, and Joe's standing there in the doorway. And he looks at me with those eyes, those beady eyes, and he goes, "Nolan, you son of a bitch." And then he got a big shitty grin on his face, so I think he appreciated it.
Yeah, Joe was great. And I remember going to the Marvel bullpen, and I know what Walt is saying about seeing the original pages and seeing all the professionals, sometimes working there, sometimes in the 90s, you would have pros coming in because of deadlines to work on pages. And I was like a sponge when I worked at the bullpen. I was trying to learn from everything that I saw, and I was able to see Joe's tour pages, the original tour page. They were twice up, and when Marvel was doing the Epic series, colored, and Joe, he did everything. He did the lettering, the coloring, and I remember that Adam Kubert, he used to letter for heavy metal and stuff. You know, he asked Joe, "Dad, can I letter that?" I said, "Nope, that's my baby." So he wanted to do the whole thing.
Yeah, I have those books sitting on my drawing table right now. The Epic Tours.
Yes.
Yeah, that's I think some of his best work in years was when those tour books came out.
But especially the artist edition is the best.
Yeah, I got the originals. The original.
Is that artist edition? Is that an IDW?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's another one I'm gonna have to track down.
Oh man, the artist edition is, they're great, and I have Walt's artist editions too, and they are fantastic.
That's great.
Yeah, I remember in the Wizard magazine, Walt, you taught about lettering, right?
Yeah, I talked about lettering just in time for computer lettering to come in, and all the stuff I said meant nothing. It was like,
no. And lettering is a must.
Was it you that produced the lettering for that section on Wizard, or was John Workman?
You know, when I got into comics, I lettered my own stuff. I quit doing that not long after I began doing comics. I lettered one issue of one of Howard's comics, the first issue of Iron Wolf. But I quit doing it after a while. I wasn't. It took more time to get the lettering, get to where I thought the lettering was good than I had really in order to get deadline jobs done. So as far as that job was concerned, I'd have to look at it now to see. I don't remember all the special effect lettering, all the display lettering in that job. That was all mine, because it's all part of the design of the several pages talking about lettering.
But
I think there's a couple of jobs where there's a spirit splash that's all sound effects. That's all lettering. I don't remember exactly what. Now, little stuff, I think. And I may have Xeroxed that and then just pasted that in as an example of what I had. A couple of examples of other people's work that I did. But the little lettering I couldn't say for sure at this point. But all the display lettering was all mine.
But did you request John Workman to be letterer for Thor?
I always request John Workman.
That's what I thought.
We worked. He was the art director at Heavy Metal in the late 70s, and he was the guy who got me essentially the gig to draw the adaptation of Alien, the Grass and Grass novel.
Classic.
And they needed a writer. At that time, I wasn't writing. I hadn't really worked up the courage to try writing, and so I suggested Archie. I mean, initially, that book was about, he wanted to get a hold of Carmine Infantino as a penciler, and he was going to get a hold of me as an inker to ink Carmine. And he got a hold of me first. Carmine's line was busy, or nobody had answering machines back in those days. So he got a hold of me, and we talked about it, and I talked my way into the job somehow. And then I suggested Archie Goodwin as the writer for the comic, and it worked out pretty well. So, his lettering was so good. I just, whenever I could from then on, when he was available, I asked for John.
Yeah, he's great.
Kevin Wolf, Walt did have a feature on the. I did an episode of the Storytellers on Walt, so you need to subscribe to the station. It's free, and go watch it because it was a fun one. And Wheezy's on it too.
Awesome.
It was really boring. Don't bother.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, that's the one where my computer froze at the end, and I couldn't get out of the stream. I left Walt and Wheezy standing there in front of the screen, and I'm long gone. I'm trying to hack into my other computer and get on. It was a nightmare.
Walt took over your storytelling thing.
That's right.
Yeah, he did. He wanted his own show. That greedy bum. What do you guys think of this cover? Oop.
Oh God.
This one ought to really piss you off, Walt.
Not enough tanks. It needed more tanks.
I love the detail here.
Yeah, the praying.
Yeah.
And the undershadow effect here that he does with all this hatching and line work, and it focuses you. All that detail right here and right here just focuses you where he wants you to look, and the other stuff is really ancillary in the background.
You know, I've noticed. I came in on the page that had the big bluff in the background, the western page, when I entered the stream.
Okay.
And you guys are talking about the depth that he would achieve, and then there was the page where we saw the parachutist just about to jump out of the plane.
Right.
I'm going to connect those two and this one because he seems to do this regularly. Like you're pointing out the detail that's in the foreground this time.
Right.
Line intervals, that's where you get a lot of the tighter lines. But if you look at the middle and the background, he'll pick one area to do the simple planes, one area, you know, if he's doing a lot of the tight interval lines like in the foreground here, you're not going to see it in the middle ground or it's going to be much less. And in that first page I came in on with the bluff in the background, it was the bluff in the far background that had all the detail up at the top, and then there was a nice open area in the middle part of the desert, and then you had those big chunky larger black shapes in the foreground. It just, again, it's all this clarity of separation and creating depth at the same time. And then with the airplane, is it Patrick talked about the simple shapes around the arch of the doorway, and all the detail was in the, again, it's as much informational, those little lines, as much as it is information, it's also just creating a pattern, you know, pattern to separate it from the other patterns. And he's always dealing with those planes in such a clear way, as well as an emotional way. It's pretty crazy how sharp.
Yeah, and as I think it was Sergio who said that he leaves some work to the reader, you know, to fill in stuff with their own minds. So his artwork to me is participatory, because not everything is delineated out there for you to admire, you know, like, oh, look, he drew every little thing. No, you're filling some of that stuff in, but what he is giving you is the emotional impact of these drawings, and that to me is what separates him from so many others, you know.
I think that's so huge. I preach that a lot, that participation, that we don't want to do this to the reader. We want to really invite the reader to come do it with us.
Right.
They're the best movies, all of that stuff. It's when we become engaged, when Hitchcock leaves something to our imagination, when Spielberg, you know, whatever. It's those moments where, oh, that means so-and-so is the killer, or whatever, where you have to figure something out, where you have to join be the synapse between the 2 points.
Right.
Yeah. And that can happen in the drawing, and it can happen in the storytelling.
Fire here.
Look at that. Look at that.
Is this unbelievable? Look at the lack of detail back here and how these figures pop in the foreground. And what I really want to blow up is this right here. Can you guys see, like, the line work on these hooks? It's like he's just drawing it, you know, like he's sketching. Here.
Right.
And yet then you get up here and you got this thick black stuff, and then you've got gray tones that he does with brush lines, and
that eye of the horse looking right at us.
Oh yeah, look at that. Yeah, that look of fear on that horse.
He used a lot of grease pencil for that story. He had the originals in his studio.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing pages.
Yeah, look at the mountains back there. There's just enough to let you know those are buttes, or, you know, whatever they are. They call them out there in the Southwest.
It's interesting, though, you know, like squeezing, you know, all the information with the Indian right, like behind the rear of the main horse, or the left foot of the main rider. you know, just squeezing those little things in there. And I mean, and look at the faces. There's 3 little lines that kind of, there's like the eyes and then the cast shadow of the nose. That's all you need, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to teach some of the online students of the influences of Joe Kubert were from black and white movies and black and white books. If you take a look at photography, black and white photos from the 50s and 60s, they didn't have all the touch-ups that we see in today's magazines. And that you can see Joe Kubert's faces on the black and white old pictures from photographers who didn't use lights all over. You gotta have some shadow, you gotta have some undefined shape, or defined more because of the cast shadows. And today's not everyone, but a lot of comics and a lot of photos today, they depend so much on color. They depend so much on the other thing to make it 3-dimensional. But I think vintage comics don't rely on color to stand out, but they lay out, the blacks and the midtones and the negative space so perfectly. They don't need color to make it clear.
That's another thing you saying that, Sergio, reminds me. That's another thing he really stressed, that I went for 1 year, but that's another thing that stayed with me, that he said, draw it like it's not going to get colored,
Right.
Let it stand on its own in black and white.
That's what I remember.
Son of Liberty Radio, thank you, sir, for the $5 super chat. I have to read these guys, so excuse me for interrupting. Not a Walt show, but Star Slammers would be an epic artist edition.
Indeed.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool to take one project like that and just go.
Since only about 15 people know about the Star Slammers, it wouldn't sell very well for IUW.
The Silver Mine. What are you talking about?
Crowdfunding.
Is that what you call it? The Silver Mine?
Crowdfunding. Then I'd have to work. I wouldn't have a day off.
That's true. That's true.
And you can go into the city and drop pages off.
Was that called the Silver Mine when they all connected?
It was. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I loved it.
Thank you.
North Free. $10 super chat. Thank you, sir. Thanks for all the joy you guys have brought us.
I just got this today from.
Hold on. Thanks for the joy you guys have brought us. Graham, Billy, Aaron, Walt, Sergio, and Patrick. Cheers, Graham, for this great gathering. Well,
just call me chopped liver.
Yeah.
Wait, he said Aaron. Aaron's not in here. He meant to say Lee. Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Aaron Weeks.
Yeah, change your name down there, Lee, to Aaron Weeks now.
Yeah, IDW is fantastic. They just sent me this. That's not Joe Kubert. That's Walt Work. Yeah, but he's also in the same genre of doing stuff. They don't depend on color. So we need more old timers like us to keep the torch moving on instead of producing coloring books.
Well, one thing about color is that when I got into comics and up until the late 80s or early 90s, the colorists really only had about 37 or 38 effective colors for everything, for value, hue, and saturation. And that was all they had. I was also in a newsprint, so all your blacks were usually pretty gray, and a lot of your small lines didn't print. So you needed to have a strong drawing. It was kind of hard. There were colorists who could do it, but it was harder to ruin stuff back then because if you had a good, strong drawing. Now, with computers, you get millions of colors or whatever the effective number really is. I don't know if the eye can see millions of colors, but you do have so many colors. You could actually create artwork designed for someone to color, to bring something new to the mix. And so I'm not sure now that doing a drawing that's strong enough just to stand on its own, it depends on who your colorist was, what kind of a team you had, who you put together, who you worked with, who understood your stuff. My stuff seems to be a little hard to color. At least that's the way I kind of read it. But there are colorists. Laura Martin springs to mind instantly.
Yeah.
Len O'Grady's done a nice job. And
Elizabeth
I've lost
Breitweiser is a great one.
What's that?
Elizabeth Breitweiser is a great colorist.
And they have done really beautiful work over my stuff. And part of that's because much of my work depends on shape. And if you get a colorist who breaks all my shapes up into smaller bits and recreates them with color, the piece doesn't work as well most of the time. Whereas Laura and others really understand quite clearly where my shapes are and how to get the most out of them. So coloring is different now and the art is different. Part of it is the technology is different, I think, from what we had in the old days.
I find myself adjusting in the same way that I adjust through the years, depending on who's inking my stuff. But now I've worked with Elizabeth several times. She's just phenomenal. I love Elizabeth's colors. And there's some, in some ways, I think we're in a golden era of color. You know, there may be lots of bad color, but there's lots of great colorists right
That's
now.
true. Yeah.
And,
well, it may be easier to screw up art with color now than it used to be.
Yeah.
But you can get, Paul Mount's did great color over him. He did a couple of pieces.
Oh, yeah, he's good.
Yeah, you get guys like Paul Mounts and Brian Miller and Laura Allred, you know, I mean, too, they're painters first. So that's why you could tell they're not just somebody with a computer, because there's so many.
They also know the color wheel. You know, they know color theory. They know what an analogous color scheme versus a split complementary color scheme is. You know, they're not just throwing colors down. You know, that's the problem with Photoshop. It's so easy just to throw colors down, and sometimes people don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, because like I do that with Paul Mounts, and I've used some younger colorists want to do things, and they're like, well, I'm like, just use like an 032 red. That's the color of her costume. And Paul's like, oh, okay, great. You know, some of them are like, what? What's it?
Lee, you have an apology from North 3. He gave another $5 super chat to say, Mr. Leaks, you have my greatest apologies. Just got out of surgery and am a little messed up at the moment. Bless you.
I'm sorry about the surgery.
Oh, man.
Well, we hope that you're
no
doing
sweat.
better.
No sweat at all.
Yeah.
So sweet.
We're just having fun with it. That's all.
And 032 red, isn't that a Peyton Manning article?
Omaha.
Omaha.
Oh, Omaha, that's right.
Yeah, Omaha, he was.
Yeah.
There's a comment there from Real Silverlock about the computer number of colors the eye discerns, and contrast being the most important. I think that was what I learned in doing. I did do some color myself, and that value meant more than the actual hue when you were laying color down, trying to get stuff to show and stuff that didn't show. Made a huge difference. So thank you.
Well, one of the things that the old colorists used to do really well was the separation of forms. And they would use color theory to do what used to be called knockouts, where, you know, that stuff was really great and easy on the eye, because no matter how much detail was in there, sometimes just monochromatic colors would bring out not only an emotional tone, but the clarity of the storytelling itself.
I think The Watchmen was like the last great colored comic book in that style. You know, like shortly after that is when we started getting into image and doing Photoshop. But I mean, Watchmen did a great job of just vibrant colors, and sometimes colors that didn't make any sense, but were so beautiful and worked with the design so well.
Well, you look at like Kevin Wolf has mentioned Lynn Varley on Frank Miller, and you look at the film 300, it's more her art than Frank's. I mean, it looks like her paintings.
Yeah.
Just stunning.
I remember watching George Russo's coloring the 8.5 by 11 at the Marvel Bullpen, you know, using Dr. Martin dyes.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are thousands of those for sale somewhere.
I have a drawer full of Dr. Martin dyes sitting over here.
Got any Zipatone too?
I miss Duo Shade. I want them to bring back Duo Shade. We need to get some people together and crowdfund some Duo Shade.
Was that the one?
I had all that stuff.
Was that the one you had two different chemicals, one for warm grays and one for cold?
Different kind of paper.
You had
just found two little bottles earlier
Roy
today.
Crane and Wally Wood were brilliant with Duo Shade. They were
and for Zeb.
Craft Tint. They were phenomenal with it.
Frank Frazetta's early stuff. He really rocked it. Do a shade really well.
Al Williamson.
Well, the king was Roy Crane.
I did a job with Walt's good friend Brett.
Please, real quick about that piece that you brought up, Graham. That we didn't talk about, that tour piece. You know, like something that. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Like something that Joe was really good at, that he had intuition, was the rule of thirds or the golden ratio.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like the amount of whites versus blacks, or, you know, again, like that golden ratio, the you know, like it's called the Fibonacci theory, you know, like whatever you want to call it. But I mean, he has just the right amount of blacks and whites on there, you know? And it's like, if you reversed it, it would still work. Like if all that was black and then what was black was white, it would still work. He knew exactly how much to put in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a gorgeous piece.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just
I love the one that tour is held in a big.
He's tied up behind that tower.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. And the original roughs called for a third folder, like it was a trifold, but they decided to go only a double page.
Right. Wow.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to have to take off. I got to get back to the studio for a while. It's been a pleasure to see all of you.
Hey,
Pleasure.
Walt, thanks for stopping in.
So,
Contributing
enjoy
to
the rest
the
of your
conversation.
chat. Everybody stay safe. See you down the road.
All right, man. Thanks again, Walt.
Hi, Louise.
I'm gonna have to bounce too. So I had an idea with my omnibus, and I'm redoing like 6 pages. So like
he got all the tips from this panel.
I got them all.
Applied them up to the pages.
But I got a little brag piece I want to show before I do. Is that I got a friend of mine made me this helmet when I did Start to Rock the Lost Battalion. And it's signed by all World War II veterans, all the Japanese American 442s, veterans, a Medal of Honor recipient. I signed it. But I got Stan Lee signed it, World War II veteran Stan, and one Korean War veteran,
Joe Kubert.
There you go. Perfect.
Right there.
But do you have Aaron Weeks?
Aaron, I don't have Aaron Weeks. I think he won the Medal of Valor.
He was big. He was big in Vietnam.
He was big in Vietnam, apparently.
He's just big.
So I'm gonna go.
All right, brother.
I got to get this omnibus to press.
Peace, brother.
I'm hoping Tuesday it goes to press. So I got the covers there, and they're like, "Where's the interiors?" I'm like, "I had an idea." So,
all right, we'll see you tomorrow night then.
See you, Billy.
Yes, you all the professionals. Great to see you guys. Love you all.
Yep.
And I'll see you guys soon for sure. Thanks,
All right, brother. See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, great stuff. Well, we had some great guests on here tonight. That's fun. Oh,
Yeah.
look at this. I haven't put it up yet. Hold on.
Ooh, I love that book.
Look at that. That is so powerful.
Yeah.
You know, they're talking about the coloring too. DC in the early 70s had the best coloring.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah.
You know, look at the blue tones on the hands, you know, to mute it down a little bit, and the stuff they would put in here, the more pinkish on this face mask.
Yeah, they wouldn't overpower the drawing.
Joe would supervise the coloring too. I mean, he wanted just tinting.
Yeah. Neil too. You know, and who was it? Wood. Was it Tatiana Wood?
Yeah.
I can't remember if she was there back in the early 70s when DC really had the best colorists.
That name was on my mind before you said her. So I think she may have been.
Okay. Yeah, either that or we're just old and remembering shit.
Yeah. That's very possible.
Very possible.
Hey, Graham, I'm gonna send Shane Davis the link. He wanted to come in.
Oh, I sent him the link, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, He's asking for it.
Cool. Yeah, I was wondering where he was. He was supposed to be in here about 8:15. I told him that he could skip the gym. I gave him dispensation.
Who? Who was that?
Shane Davis?
Shane Davis.
Oh. And Bart didn't make it, huh?
No, Bart hasn't made it yet. Hey, some guy named Billy Tucci just gave us a $5 super chat. Thank you, Mr. Billy Tucci. Great stream. I'm just going to sit here and listen while I work. Well, you can pop in again if you want, my friend.
I guess we can't talk about him now.
Yeah, now that we know he's listening. I didn't realize that, I know that Kubert had done the Unknown Soldier covers, but every issue I ever bought had one of the Filipino artists doing it.
Nestor Redondo?
No.
Rudy Flores?
No.
I'll go through them all. Alex Nino or
No, it's not that high a level.
okay.
There's tiers. But anyway, so when I came across these images here, I didn't realize that that Joe had illustrated some of these. So I gotta search these out and find out what books of was it Star Spangled War? I think it was.
Oh, I have them. I can let you know which ones.
Yeah, let me know what numbers they are.
Do you subscribe to DC Infinite thing?
No.
What is it?
No, you can read all the books ever put out by DC Comics. If you subscribe to this yearly thing, you would just go in there and search for the books and stuff.
Jerry Tallock. That's who it was.
Yes.
Yeah. But I want to get the ones.
He's a great painter.
I love his painting.
Yeah.
I just saw his Facebook page in the last few months.
Yeah. I've been following him on Instagram, and he posts some great stuff. But when I was reading The Unknown Soldier, I'd get captured by those Kubert covers. But the interiors were completely different and had a different sensibility to them, and I wasn't digging on it.
Yeah. Oh, if you subscribe to the DC Infinite app or desktop, you can check the books from every creator, and you can see who did the interiors.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things on the internet you can check on, get all that info for. But let's see what else we got here. Oh, here we go.
Ooh,
Enemy Ace. Look at that.
Oh, classic.
Yeah, I have the artist edition of Enemy Ace too. It's phenomenal.
What don't you have?
What's great about this is the that top panel, but the kind of X composition. The plane's going this way, and then it's like right in the middle. It's so great.
Yeah, and I love how he would do like this tiny little plane here crashing, and this big thick black smoke streaming across. It really gave you the feel of aerial combat,
Mm-hmm.
And this little plane right here, that's not a tangent line, which it could have been,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very calculated placement.
Yeah.
And the gaps that he leaves between the lines to allow the to breathe.
Right. So it doesn't look like a little plane that's attached to this plane. It still looks like it's in the distance.
Right.
It almost gives if you look at that big prominent plane in the left-hand page, and then the next one, the next largest one to the right, and then just a little below to the right of that, there's almost like this tumbling feeling as your eye cascades through them, but then you just have that wall of them that are like all kind of facing the same way coming at you from the background. But that animated tumbling effect is
right.
I think that leads you right down to that one you were talking about, Graham, with the tiny one that you kind of go right down that column of smoke to see that little tiny one in the distance.
Wait,
Do you think he used models? like had little models of these airplanes that he could?
Yes, he did. Yes,
he did.
If you ever watch Joe Kubert's correspondence videos, you'll be able to see that he has some of these planes in the intro for the lessons.
Okay.
So he had miniatures.
That makes sense because these are really hard to draw.
Right.
Particularly on
Russ
different
Heath.
angles.
Russ Heath also had miniatures, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and Russ used to, when you photograph something that's small, there's a anamorphic thing that happens with the lens that makes it look like it's not a full-size thing. So when you're shooting a model, you have to make adjustments. And he used to make those adjustments when he was developing the stuff. I think Larry Hama was talking about that one time, that he would make the adjustments so that the perspective, or the not the perspective, the size ratio of things was actually consistent with what a real tank would be, even though he was shooting a model. That's going above and beyond. It's just crazy. But I had to draw a Tiger tank for a book I did called The Expendables Go to Hell, and I found a digital 3D model that I could use and turn it around, and then I would just drop it in a layer, lower its opacity, and then draw it in the way I needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very hard. But I can't even imagine what Russ Heath and Joe Kubert did with these tanks, how they were able to draw this stuff. I mean, it's just it's just incredible.
Yeah,
now, I remember hearing. I don't know if I heard it from him myself, and I'm sure it was part tongue in cheek, but somebody asked him about doing reference on the tanks and some of the arms, and he said, "I didn't have to. Russ already did it." Russ Heath already did the reference.
Yeah.
But sometimes he was suggesting that.
But that's something that Joe would say always: reference,
Yeah.
reference. You don't make things up. Use reference. Use reference. He would
I love panel 2, by the way. That bottom left-hand panel, I love that panel. That's such a beautiful. The second, the first in the bottom tier, with just the plane.
Oh yeah, the angled, yeah.
We're looking through the wings. That is such a great shot. And
the distance plane is just linear. There's no shadows or anything on it.
It's so good.
Old Dirty Fatty, $5 super chat. Thank you. Hail Lee, hail Sergio, a former QB. Peter S says hello and great to see you.
Great to see you.
Hey,
Do you know
Peter.
who that is?
Hey, Peter.
All right. Cool. Yeah, like these machine guns too, that are mounted here. You could tell that they're referenced.
Yeah, I remember talking to Andy Kubert about Joe's thumbnails, and because the secret to all of these amazing pages that Joe has done over the years are in his thumbnails.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to Andy about that, and Andy told me they're all mine.
Well, it was crazy. Like, if you looked at Joe's thumbnails, they looked exactly like the finished pages. Like the compositions were almost identical.
He solved the problems on the thumbnails already.
Yeah.
Wait for the size to solve the problems. As he decided the shadows and all those things that we talked about in the thumbnail stage.
Yeah.
Already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
We did that one.
You didn't find any thumbnails from Joe, Graham?
I wasn't looking for thumbnails, so I'm sure there's stuff up there.
Yes. No, they're the soul. They're the core of it all.
Mm-hmm.
If you study Joe's thumbnails the way that Andy did, I mean, Adam and Andy, they were growing up with a master. I mean, they really learned tons and tons of stuff.
No doubt.
Yeah, but Joe's, he did them on hotel books, or those notebooks from hotels and stuff. Some of the Tarzan, it's done in those hotel scribble notebooks.
Notepads.
Yeah, yellow page and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, he uses anything. I remember when teaching at the Cuban school, I would sit strategically close to his desk to Joe, because the teachers' meetings were at inside Joe's studio, so I would sit close to where his desk was, and he was working on stuff. Mike Chen and all of us talking about things and stuff, and I would overlook Joe's shoulder, and he was constantly drawing, and sometimes he would do thumbnails on any kind of paper. It didn't matter.
Napkins.
Well, I don't know if he did on napkins, but probably did. I don't know.
This is a classic. I think this is from The Return of Tarzan. The second, actually, they did that in those giant limited edition.
Artist edition?
No.
Sergio's, I have it.
Yeah. No, this is the old size comic. It was called
okay.
Edition.
Yes.
Yeah, they were like 11 by 17. And the second Tarzan one was this Return of Tarzan.
There it is.
But don't tell me.
Let me see, Lee.
You don't have the Tarzan artist edition?
No, that's the first one.
It must be this one then. This is the one that I beat up the most.
Oh, that's when you know that the comic is good is when the cover has gone missing.
Hold on, hold that up again, Lee. I got you on solo screen.
Okay, I see that Lee.
I'm sorry, I grabbed the wrong one.
Lee, you have the Tarzan. You have the Tarzan, Return of Tarzan, right there behind you.
Yeah, well, that's the artist edition.
Yeah. Right, that's better. That's even better.
But the companion to this one no longer exists because it disintegrated from my.
That's the one that's the green cover.
Looking at it, the green cover.
Yeah,
with his arm in the lion's.
Show the artist edition to Graham so he can drool a little.
I have the artist edition.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you didn't have it.
No. I got the artist edition of the Kubert Tarzan.
Okay.
It's right next to this one.
Ah, all right.
Monster Island.
The artist edition of Monster Island. Excellent.
I have that one too.
Of course you do.
And how come they don't have Lee Week's artist edition? What's the deal?
I actually had a conversation recently with somebody.
Okay.
About it, but I don't know how. I've never had to chase down stuff I don't know how they do that. So.
Okay.
They've got people.
There's talk about doing something.
There should be one.
Walt is king of the artist edition, right?
Walt.
He's in tight with IDW, so.
What's that?
He's in tight with IDW, so.
Well, and he owns all his artwork.
Oh.
He owns what?
All of his artwork.
He didn't never sold any of it?
Wow. Yeah, he's kept everything.
Well, he
wrote. Gosh, just look at that! Look at that panel.
He wrote.
Look at that! Look at that!
Yeah.
That's not fair. That's not fair.
Hey, I know.
I could blow it up.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Man.
Again, like look how simple those people are, but we know exactly who they are and what they're doing. There's no reason to overdraw those people.
Mm-hmm.
And he laddered those too.
He what? Lettered this?
Yes, Joe.
Oh, okay. Look at even the fencing, just straight little lines, and then where it's going to butt up against this foreground piece, he just stops the lines and it gives it some breathing room. This
is something that I feel is only starting to happen in the last decade or so for me, where it doesn't have to look like it. It has to feel like it.
Right.
With those lines, he did just what's necessary for it to feel like it. And when you get past that certain point where you've done it enough, you can just do that. But he's just, and he seemed to, I don't know how old he would have been, but there seemed to be a place where he had a revolutionary change over a short period of time, where his stuff was fairly tighter in the 50s, I think, and then somewhere in the early 60s, it just, and he must have been mid-30s, I would think.
Yeah, like when he was doing Tarzan, that was in the early 70s.
Yeah.
He was born in 26, so he was in his 40s.
Yeah.
Doing Tarzan, you know.
Look at this. Look at this guy holding the barrel up. Look at that.
Yeah.
Right here.
Oh my goodness.
What I love is this the sense of nighttime and the jungle being lit by the lights inside this bomba. Like you got this fire going up here, and then you got those leaves and trees being lit up back there behind it. So it really feels like it's a nighttime sequence, you know, in the jungle there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the use of that light just behind that big pot, whatever that is.
Yes. Yeah.
The fire coming up that just gives him the permission to drop out all the detail, so you get that wonderful contrast again.
Right.
Great clarity.
There's something else that's happening in here that I actually see Adam do a lot these days, and that's doing the double page kind of spread that has the element that goes across the spine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Adam incorporates that a lot, and here again, like that X formation, bringing the viewer from the left side of the page to the right side of the page seamlessly, even though there is a seam there. You know, it's like, it's great. And the guy that has the spoon that's scooping inside of there, how half of his body and just the right amount of his face is on the right side, you know? It's crazy. It's just, and knowing exactly how to do it.
And it also, not just left to right, which you're absolutely right. That close-up inset drops you down. So it not only takes you right, but it takes you back up to that guy's face.
Yeah.
So it's not just across, but it's across and up to get. Yeah, it's really, really phenomenal. And I'm sure I think, because I don't know if you've ever broken down your own pages afterwards, where you see the pathways, and it's like I'm not trying to do it, but you just know something doesn't feel right when it's not there.
Yeah.
It's this feeling thing that's like, this is years and years and years of doing it, where he's just got such a sensitivity that it's not an academic thing up in the head. It's just something that he can feel.
Right. Yeah. It's intuition, and it's shooting from the hip.
Yeah.
And he's seeing these images in his head the way he's putting them down too, you know, because that story is being told in his head. And after many, many years, all of us, we're at points in our career right now, we're doing this kind of stuff as well. Maybe not as elegantly as but
I hope one day I get there. I actually shared a example of some of his thumbnails, Graham. I don't know if you want to bring it up or not.
Okay. Yeah, let me bring it up. Let me just thank North Free for the $5 super chat. And he's got a question for the panel. Is there a comics artist these days that comes close in any way to Joe Kubert's style and composition?
I mean, like for me, like I see. I see Sergio. Sergio does a lot of Joe stuff. But I also see Andy does a lot of Joe Kubert stuff
I
too.
see Andy doing a lot of. Yeah.
I would probably Sergio and Andy.
What's that?
I would say Sergio and Andy probably.
Yeah. Like Adam is interesting because Adam kind of went off and did his own thing. Like he's equally as good, but he's doing his own thing. But yeah, Sergio and Andy, I think, are the ones that come to mind.
Wow. I would say that Lee Weeks also has learned a lot from Joe, right, Lee? I mean, you.
Oh my goodness! More after leaving the school.
Right.
I mean, I learned very important things at the school, but it was a couple of years into my career. I was very frustrated at how much work I would put into a page and how it just didn't look like there was much there. Again, this idea of line intervals. I would spend so much time with it just work, but it never felt full. So there was a period, probably a couple months, where I would just, as an exercise, I would take a Joe page and I would copy it, copy a panel. So I wanted to feel what does this feel like to do a complete drawing with that few lines? How does that feel? So
it's a great exercise, and Joe encouraged that.
Yeah.
I mean, not to copy himself. He encouraged us to copy others.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, there was an assignment third year where you had to take someone else's style and try to duplicate it.
Right.
Yeah, I remember that.
I
So we did that in second year, not first year, I don't think.
I remember my first day at the Kubert school when it was in the mansion. My 1 year, your second year, Graham, it was the last year we were at the mansion.
Right.
You come in to that foyer area, and there's a bulletin board on the right-hand side as you head down towards the office. And I believe, maybe it wasn't the first day, it was in the first month or so. It was third year they did that assignment, because I remember there's a guy named Al Baker that did Kirby. Adam did Mobius. Ron Wagner did Russ Heath.
Yep.
And the one that, the thing is, when you
did John Buscema.
What was that?
You did John Buscema.
I didn't. I was first year. I didn't.
Okay.
Somebody did John. I think Andy did John Buscema, actually.
I did John Romita.
What's that?
I did John Romita.
Is that right?
Yeah.
The thing that I remember about that, though, is like when you're young, like just seeing finished pages, they look so great. And then you come back years later and you see not your own stuff, but all of the student work. It's like, wow, it really wasn't that great. But there was one assignment that was hanging on that wall. There was a guy that emulated Wallace Wood.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw those pages hanging in Mike Chen's office probably 12 to 15 years later, and they were better than I remember them. To me, and I'm not just saying this, I think that he was the best guy that I've went through. That was Fred Fassberger. Remember Fred?
Fred Fassberger, yeah, Freddie, yeah.
I think he was the most talented guy to go through school.
I wonder whatever happened to him.
He does caricatures in New York. He could do anything.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. There's so many dudes like that I went to school with. There he is.
Hey, how are you guys?
Hey, Shane.
Hey, how are you, sir? Haven't seen you in a few years. Hey, Sergio, how have you been, sir?
Good.
I think it was 2019 New York Comic Con we saw each other last.
Yeah, that was it. And then Heroes Con probably around that same time, maybe.
Well, that would have come before. New York Comic Con was October, and then it was just a couple months before COVID hit.
I picked the worst artist for that assignment, by the way.
Oh, who'd you do?
I don't know why, and Joe kept trying to talk me out of it every step of the way. I picked Jay Lee for some reason.
Oh, no.
And Joe was just like, this is just wrong. And then he's like, I see what he's doing, but don't you want to do another artist? And I just, I don't know what it was. I was just like, no, I really like Jay Lee right now. I really want to do this.
I picked Andy.
Oh,
because I figured that I could bring my roughs to him and ask him what he thinks.
Real quick, when you guys strategic move.
I think Jay's great.
Real quick, when you guys had that spread up of Sergeant Rock getting ready to jump out of a plane, I think the story I heard about that, he was talking about it in the teacher's lunch room or something like that, the break room. He was really inspired by Danda Brothers. The first episode where they're jumping out of the plane. So I think that if you look that up, that was before that, and he really loved that first episode of them jumping out of the plane. And I'd have to go back and watch, but Joe was really into any type of war cinema or war film or anything like that.
Yeah,
I've been getting a hankering lately to do either a war story or a Western.
Yeah. I think Western comics would be awesome if DC had a long run with Jonah Hex, but I don't know what the market's like for
or an alien space Western.
That's right.
Right, that's right.
That one's doing pretty good.
Remember.
Yeah, we just hit 108,000 on that one.
Fantastic.
That's awesome. Fantastic. That's insane.
Like something I was that we were talking about like before Shane came in, but like there's so many dudes that I'm sure all you guys went to school with, but I know I went to school with that were so good that just disappeared. It's like guys that were top 3 of the class, and it just like you just never heard from them again. I see them pop up on Facebook once in a while, but it's very strange. It's like some guys could do the assignment if it was handed to them, but when it came to them to go out and get the job, which is actually probably like 51% of it, they couldn't do it. It was very strange.
So I stuck around the school after I graduated and worked for Joe on the PS magazine for about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years.
Oh, cool.
So it's weird having Joe as a teacher and then working for Joe. Like those are two different Joes.
Yeah.
We had some interesting assignments. Like DC Comics wanted us to they clean up old Siegel and Schuster Superman for the black and white omnibus or whatever they do. The essentials, they're not essentials. That's the Marvel one. I don't know what the DC ones were called, but they basically scanned in colored pages or photo color prints, folded them in half and mailed to us, that then we would have to scan in and erase all the colors, zip a tone and touch up and everything like that. Well, like there was all these oddball assignments. And Joe, with the PS magazine, that account, like later on it kind of came out, like he was basically keeping that account, trying to keep students from just going back home. And because they would go back home and just not draw, they would end up into bad habits or the same things they were doing before. And, so he was trying to keep that account around just to give students a reason to hang around and keep working and drawing around the school until they, and he would, make us or give us junk if we weren't running up to DC Comics with portfolios, constantly, like once a month or something like that. So, that was a big part of me getting in the comics. But what's interesting is I got in not with actual comic books, but with licensing artwork. And Joe, the PS magazine stuff was still kind of like that in the sense that everything had to go through military approvals. And I had Joe ink me one time, which was kind of cool because I realized how little he penciled. So I spent all this time drawing this tank and everything, and then Joe just basically redrew everything in inks. And it was like, I wasted a bunch of time.
I helped Joe in 2 of those PS magazines. So he did some amazing short stories for the whole run on that magazine.
Marvel let him use Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus for a short story, and that they were like, yeah, sure, yeah. There's one of those that has Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus. I guess because it was for the military and it was free, Marvel didn't care.
Man, like, sure. like talk about clout, like talk about someone, it's like Joe was just the man, just being able to do stuff like that.
Yeah. Who's going to argue with him?
Yeah, I know. It's like,
I know, right?
Maybe Toph.
Like for me, it's like the best, the best 2 guys on ever is Joe Kubert and Alex Toth. Those are my 2 favorite guys to this day.
I don't know if you guys talked about it, but in his office, in a glass case, he had what I guess was a color rough or a color concept of his original Muhammad Ali versus Superman cover. Because I guess him and did you guys talk about that?
No.
A lot of people don't know that. I went up to DC Comics and, one of the floors, they actually have that up and they have like a framed image where it tells you everybody in the crowd, right? By numbers or whoever. But people at DC didn't even know Joe originally drew that.
Really?
And then he lost the job. Yeah, I don't know. It was probably a licensing thing where they commissioned him and Neil Adams to do it, and whoever Muhammad Ali liked got the job. But Joe originally drew that cover.
I know the story.
I don't think that. I think it was something a little different.
It was the family of Muhammad Ali didn't like the way Joe portrayed Muhammad Ali. Yeah. And they wanted more realistic, like Neil Adams.
Yeah.
So they hired Neil, and Neil had such a high regard to Joe that he copied Joe's layouts exactly. We did it. Yeah. So he
revered Joe. He revered Joe. Still.
Yeah. The one thing I love see that Enemy Ace that Neil Neil drew and Joe inked?
No.
Oh,
yes.
I have a collection of the Enemy Ace stuff. This was old stuff.
Yeah. That Neil drew it in Joe Kubert style, right? But still with some of that Neil impact, and then Joe inked it, and you can see the differences, but it's a seamless marriage. It's pretty amazing.
No, that's not the one that has the dedication to Kanigher and Kubert at the end. Is it? It's in the Treasury edition. Because I thought Neil inked. Maybe it's a different story. Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's in the it might be in the artist edition.
You know what's interesting about Joe's inks? It's like so much style is in the inks. Like there was a short, there was a Adam Kubert story that was done maybe about like 9 years ago, and there was flashback scenes in this story, and Adam drew it, but Joe inked it, and it looks like Joe Kubert drawings. It's like there's like it's so crazy like that so much style was in the brush for him.
Yeah. It was weird. His if you went to his office, his desk, he had like every pen in the world. If there was a new pen that came through the art store, it was there. Like the rinkiest, like plastic throwaway pens. Like I don't even know. I mean, I never really watched him ink too much, but I was, you know, we were trying to touch up that Siegel and Schuster stuff, and it got so. I mean, computer technology wasn't, we didn't have Cintiqs and stuff like that. So it was a real pain in the butt trying to clean it up. So he just had us print out the black and whites and go in and physically touch up the printouts and then scan those back in. He was like, I like this pen over here. I just picked this pen up. And like, so he was always experimenting with any new pen that was coming around on the market. One thing, and it's kind of sad, but one of the things that really sticks with me about Joe is, you know, he was still working in the hospital, you know.
Yeah,
he was.
He was inking Andy Kubert
on
that last
Watchmen thing. What was it?
Yes. He was inking to the last hours that he was able to, and then Bill Sienkiewicz took over.
You know, beautiful. His work ethic is what really made him the artist he is. I mean, you know, you're going to get better. You're going to be awesome the more hours you put in on things. He was naturally talented and fast, but, you know, like his work ethic, I mean, was like 6 days a week. Because I know at the school, he'd still be in on Saturdays sometimes.
Well, that generation, you know, they worked for a living. They worked to put food on plates, and they worked hard. They're Depression era, you know, refugees, if you will, and they all were like that. Kirby, Kubert, Buscema, you know, they thought of it as a job. You know, it beat digging ditches, and you know, they got the work done. You know, and you were talking about before these guys, Patrick, that were in classes that were so freaking great, and you wonder where they are now. They're not doing anything. Well, the one thing you can't teach is drive.
Yeah,
and a lot of those guys just didn't have that. Their work ethic sucked. They didn't have the drive to succeed. And you can get a guy that's a mediocre talent, but if he's got a really ambitious drive, he's going to make it, you know?
Yeah. Graham, I'm awful, but I work really hard.
What's that?
I said, like me, I'm awful, but I work really hard.
You're not awful.
You're not awful. Graham, I just sent you a link of the Tarzan's thumbnails from Joe. I don't know if you're able to see it on the message there.
No, I can't call it up on the message. If you're going to send me a link, send it in the private chat.
Oh, in the private chat.
Yeah,
it's over on the right, next to the comments, Sergio.
Okay.
There was some, because they were cleaning out some stuff of Joe's, and evidently he animated something that never got used. It was like something for Tor. Yeah, there was actually like a Tor fighting a pterodactyl scene. Like Joe was just bored one day and was trying to animate, like just playing around, and it was Tor fighting. I think they said Tor. They couldn't find all of it. That was the thing. Part of it was missing. I don't know what made Joe do that. Like, was there a lot of money in independent comics when he did Tor? Like, I'm kind of confused about that era.
What was the question?
Tor. Like, when he went to do Tor, like, was the independent market thriving, or like, what was that about?
Well, many years ago, when he was on a trip in a big ship, he thought of Tor. And he created and he wrote it, and he proposed that to DC, I found the original Thor comic books, which are better printing than the reprints. You know, the original 1, 2, 3, 5, 1 through 5, way back when, 50 years ago, or more. I don't know.
More, because it was in the 1950s that he did tour.
It was, right?
Yeah. So.
And, the original comics look better than all the reprints. Yeah.
But who published that? It wasn't independent, so it wasn't like, I mean, Joe owned the character, but there was a publisher. Was it Hillman, or who published those original tours? Or was it that company he started with?
Let's look it up.
Yeah, if only we had a way to look it up.
I'll look it up now.
There was one other story that has to do with Tor, but somebody told me he also shared a patent for
but
for 3D comics.
Joe always loved Tor because he felt it was his way of doing Tarzan, and his love for dinosaurs and the dilemma of men with life and its challenges and stuff. So he always enjoyed the storyline. So he always brought it back. Always brought it back.
And in September 1953, Tor was first published by St. John Publications.
That's St. John.
Yeah, I was able to find those books from eBay, and the first print, they look gorgeous. They look much better than any other reprints. I don't know why, but I think they didn't reprint from originals. They probably reprint from stats.
Yeah, that had gotten bad.
Right.
Look at this piece. This is really cool. Talking about his love for dinosaurs. I love that Gertie the dinosaur look back there. You know.
But this is like everything. It's like army guys and dinosaurs and cavemen.
Yeah.
All we need is like a World War I airplane in the background, and then we're set.
Yeah. Then it's like this is like the ultimate Kubert drawing.
Yeah, he loved dinosaurs. He loved it.
I love this take on this dinosaur too. It's
and again, like look at his feet.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you don't have to finish the feet for the viewer to understand that he's standing on something.
Yeah, even the boots. You know, like he's got these little hash lines that are supposed to be laces.
And today someone would put the toenails on the barbarian and the hairs, and Joe's like, you don't need that. You know,
you don't need that.
Yeah. That's called tagging. And you know who taught me tagging? Erwin Hazen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And tagging has to do with that minimal representation of something that makes you believe that you did it, you drew it, just by giving just enough information that the brain finishes. And I have an example of that when I had to do something, and I spent hours looking for a comic book that I remember seeing this thing that I needed. When I found the book, there was nothing there. I was like, this is nothing. Because when I read it at the first time, my brain believed it.
Yeah.
And I finished whatever the tagging representation of the object was depicted when I first saw it, and I believed it.
Who told you about?
If I found that reference, it would help me to redraw it, but it didn't, because
who told you about the tagging? Erwin Hazen.
Erwin Hazen.
That's another one that we have to have a show about.
Erwin.
Yeah.
I just want to do a show about his conquests.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Speaking of feet, look at the feet on that dinosaur.
I know.
Yeah, that's like.
But Graham, I sent the link to the chat. Okay.
You want me to pull that up?
Love how all the toes disappear, like they're all broken, so it really feels planted and pushed into the ground there.
Some weight.
He was a really big Mobius fan, and I never see that in his work. I don't know why.
You know, it's like I never saw Mobius in him until I started looking at some of Dan Fraga stuff, because Dan Fraga draws a little bit like a mix between Mobius and Joe Kubert, even though he's never been into Joe Kubert. But I see a little bit of it now these days.
You ever see that? You must have seen the video of Neil, Mobius, and Joe taking turns drawing on an easel for a television show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh. And I love that. I don't remember who goes first, but I know that it's
Mobius
either
goes
Neil
first.
or Mobius because Joe's last. And he comes in and just boldly starts drawing. Like there's another one with John Romita Sr. and Joe.
Yeah.
And John carefully draws Spidey. And then Joe comes in and draws somebody flying behind him.
Hawkman. He does Hawkman.
Hawkman. But just fearlessly integrates with the other artists' work without any. He's fearless. He was fearless.
Lee.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed, but that video of the three, Mobius, Neil Adams, and Joe Kubert, they did a light pencil before they went in. It was already there.
Okay.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I don't think I noticed that. I'll check it out again.
Yeah. I'll share the link of a video.
There's one with John Buscema too, and I never thought that John Buscema would have to play second fiddle to anybody, but he did a drawing of the Silver Surfer, and it was just perfunctory. It was just the Silver Surfer standing there, so there wasn't anything to it. But the other guys who came in, I think it was Hogarth did one, and somebody else, whoever it was that Buscema was up against, they kind of blew him away on that thing.
I remember the Buscema one.
Yeah, but the Kubert one is killer. Yeah, he just.
I just sent the link of the video.
Did you guys talk about his?
I sent the wrong one. I'm sorry.
Did you guys talk about his use of inset panels that much, or I came in kind of late?
No.
Where did that come from?
But we didn't talk about it.
I mean, where did that come from? Because that was pretty unique, right?
That was on that first Tarzan piece that you brought up, Graham, where he had that inset panel with that plane crashing.
Yeah. Here we go.
Behind you.
But in his era, was that very common, inset panels?
No. No, it wasn't. I mean, he kind of developed this kind of storytelling style. And we talked about that a little bit where when he did the text stuff, the Europeans told him, no, you can't do this. We don't want insert panels. We don't want vertical panels. We want to have, Italians, I guess, can't read it that way. They need the straight grids, But Kubert, kind of like pulled this one out of his hat when he started doing like Enemy Ace, when he had to do like aerial combat stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Where
he would have like this mess of planes, and then he would have to have one square around the specific plane that you're supposed to be looking at, and then the next page you're actually in the guns,
Yeah, like he needed all that space to give you the sense of depth of open sky battle, but then also he had to do shots of Enemy Ace himself, the personalized close-ups. So then he would do those insert panels there, and it wouldn't sacrifice all that landscape that he needed for.
Right. So you could literally see a pullback shot of the plane and the pilot in the same within because I've heard people talk about, and I don't think it was from him, it was from somebody else. They were talking about, this gives a moment within that time. So I've never heard Joe talk about it though.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing. I've only heard other people recite the technique, but never from Joe. And I don't know if he's even ever talked about it publicly in a book or anything like that.
Hey, let's welcome RT Bear to the crowd.
Hey, party people, what's up?
Hey.
Hey, brother, how are you?
Good. Thanks for the invite. This is good. All my favorite people here.
Hey, you missed. We had Walt Simonson on before too.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
That was great.
Yeah, he hates me.
Why?
Every time I see him, I end up asking for a favor, and he's just tired of it.
He mentioned.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, did he?
No, he allowed to ask favors to
Just
all?
kidding.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, but it ends up taking a lot of time, and you have to, basically twist his arm. But he'll do it. He wrote a foreword for Chrono Mechanics graphic novel I did.
Oh, nice.
And you know what he said in the foreword in the rundown? He's like, art's a pain in the ass, and he didn't let me say no, and he kept at me. And then I always do this. I go, you were one of those guys that was responsible early on for giving me great advice. I said, I always looked at you as a mentor. And he goes, whenever he uses that line, I have to say yes. And then he says, I still have no idea what I did for art, but apparently there was something. Yeah, he's a funny guy.
Oh man. So we've been talking a little Joe Kubert love here.
Joe Kubert. I don't know much about Kubert other than the comics, but the brothers I worked with frequently.
Adam and Andy.
Yeah.
Very, very, very talented guys, both of them.
Yeah, I did a caricature of art when we worked together on Chuck and Bo Smith script of Batman Wildcat.
That thing was so awesome. Yeah, I got like a pin nib behind my ear, and I got boxing gloves on.
I'm trying to find it here.
I think the first Sergio drawing I ever saw was your caricature of Joe. If you've got a shot of that, that's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. That's really good.
And did you do that as a student? You did that before you even got to the school, didn't you?
No, as a student. Yeah.
As a student. Right. That was so sharp.
Oh, thank you.
It's cool when people can do caricatures in their actual style. Like when I do caricatures, I don't think it looks like my style.
I'm not very good at caricatures. Pushing the features and stuff. I just, they all end up looking like the person too much. It doesn't look like, like Tom Richmond from Mad Magazine is so good at that kind of stuff, and of course Mort Drucker, right. And those guys who can, they capture the nuances and they push the features in such a way it looks exactly like them and their body language and everything. And I just cannot do that stuff.
The hardest thing about caricatures, if the person is too good looking, because there's nothing to hold on to. Like if
right.
it's like a little bit large forehead or big ears or something like that, it's easy to caricature. But when they're too good looking, it's like, what do you?
I saw Sergio do a caricature of a young girl at a convention about 3 months ago. She had glasses. I think you might remember her, Sergio, but you did a profile picture of her. She was a beautiful girl, and like Sergio, he did a amazing caricature of her. And I don't know how he did it, because he didn't make her look goofy at all, and she looks beautiful, and he nailed her and made her. Well, he didn't nail her, but he made her look beautiful.
Oh, is the link in the description in the private chat, Sergio?
Yeah, link of the character of Joe Kubert and your character and Chuck Dixon's character. Yeah.
Sweet.
Just click on it.
Yeah, you guys will be blown away. And Sergio is a master.
Oh, thank you. I did caricatures when I was 14 years old for a local newspaper. Yeah, was published when I was 11 through 14. But I paid a lot of my schooling drawing characters of people in the school that I went to in upstate New York. And then after that, going to the Kubert school, I did caricatures for bar mitzvahs. And the thing about caricatures is usually people want caricatures done in the weekend, so I didn't like that. But
go ahead.
I'm just going to share my one caricature story. I'll look at those.
Oh, look at that.
I mentioned Fred earlier, Fred Fassberger. That was his. I mean, he could do anything, but he really loved doing caricature.
So that's Chuck Dixon, Bo Smith, Chuck, Art, and me.
So sometimes he'd get gigs where he'd need an extra. They'd need two guys, and he would call me. This is like a few months, not even a year after I got out of school, and one of the gigs was for a university in New Jersey, and we had to rent tuxes that they paid for and stuff. And it was a really good. I mean, it was mid-'80s. It was like $85 an hour, or something like that. And we're sitting in this. It's a donors gathering. So everybody's, the tuxes and formal wear and stuff. And Fred's got his. I hope it's okay that I tell the story. It's like almost 40 years old now. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. So Fred's got his work box open and he's doing caricatures and he sees, he just gets this thought in his head. There's a little cup with some tools in it, and he dumps the tools in his box, reaches in his pocket, sticks $5 in the cup and sets it back out there like somebody tipped him. And through the night, everybody's like, all of a sudden, I put one out. Everybody's tipping us, and they're trying to out-tip each other. So we'd like doubled our money in this night doing caricatures. And I just remember, and I didn't know how to caricature. I would just try to get the likeness. But I remember this one woman started saying, can you take off the and he just goes, lady, I'm a caricaturist. I'm not a plastic surgeon.
That's the catch-22 with caricatures. If you're doing it for like a specific client, you kind of have to make them look good at the same time, because people take offense to it if you don't.
Yeah, I remember I did this lady, the caricature of her, and she asked me, "Oh, please don't double chin and no wrinkle in."
Yeah,
everything she asked for, that's cool. That's a good character.
That's
but
nice.
I did the character. She loved it so much. She paid me 3 times the amount of what it didn't look like her. She loved it. It was like, whoa, oh, that's beautiful.
Well, I remember in life drawing, like, because I was always more illustrative or comic, so everything's always heightened, right? So you're drawing the models, right? And so then what they do is sometimes when they take a break, they look at people's drawings of them. And so I remember, like, this happened more than once, and even the teacher made a point of this. They come by and they go, "Wow, you made me look better than I really look," And then I remember the teacher saying, because she thought it was bad, and she was like, "Draw what you see," and I go, "This is just how I do it." You know what I mean? So you could tell it was them, but it was kind of an idealized version of them. So I think even when I was learning, there was kind of this early kind of desire to make people look, I guess, better than they really do, or more heroic, or sexier, or whatever it is.
Yeah, there's kind of characters that embellishes, and there's the other kind that like really shocks.
Yeah.
And I've seen, I don't know if you guys seen, there's a nice video, a documentary on characterists, and Tom Richmond shared the link, and I think it's in Netflix. That you can watch all these guys going through some horrible stories of people that even threaten their lives because of how they did their character. So some people are good sports and other people are not. Mm-hmm. So it's a risky kind of.
Well, especially when you do political cartooning. If you do political cartooning, watch out, man.
Right,
yeah, fair game.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, like what happened with like with that Brazilian artist who did some caricatures.
Joe Bennett.
Yeah.
Who was it? Who?
Oh yeah, Joe Bennett.
Joe Bennett. Okay, yeah. I think Dennis O'Neill requested me when I was drawing Batman for him, do not draw anybody that looks like a celebrity, because we don't want to get in trouble with DC and celebrities suing DC for drawing people that look like them on the books.
Well, he missed our Abbott and Costello then, because Chuck and I had these characters, Chick and Wilbur, that showed up in all these different detective comics. And every time they showed up, they had a different job because they got fired from the job they were in the last issue. And so they were just like, they're based on Abbott and Costello, and they're called Chick and Wilbur because
nobody cares.
Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein.
I think if they don't see it, if they don't recognize it, they don't do anything. Because I used to do where most of us are older, except for Shane and Patrick. But there was a time when like there were Elvis sightings. Like that was a big thing. It's like, oh, Elvis is seen here, there, the other thing. So when I was doing Adventures of Superman, working on that with Dan Jurgens, I used to put not Superman, but I used to put Elvis Presley in the background, on the books, and some people got it. So there's Elvis sightings in that run, throughout that run.
That's cool.
Well, you could always say it was just an impersonator, because there's Elvis impersonator.
Yeah,
I've been putting Elmer Fudd in just about everything since I did the.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I put him everywhere.
Who?
Oh, that's great.
I hide him. Yeah.
No.
Well,
'Cause I
technically,
know-
you created that look. I mean, it's not the Warner Brothers.
Right.
element,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I just want to say something to Lee Weeks. I'm trying real hard not to freaking lose my mind. I can't believe I'm on a live stream with Lee Weeks.
Oh,
I
my-
love your work,
Oh.
man. You are so freaking good.
oh.
Yeah, no.
take a bow, Lee.
Lee's
Take
the
a bow.
best. Take a bow. Yeah.
I just want to make sure I have your address right to send that check.
And that's yeah.
Thank you very much.
Hey Lee, the last one bounced, so
I don't know what to say.
don't get
Thank
that
you.
one as well.
I know that the dude got in trouble many times for putting drawings in the background, and the editors kept saying, "You can't do that. This character belongs to another company." And Steve would say, "You can't tell me what not to do."
Wasn't there a thing in the 80s where some female Christian singer got used as a model for a
Yeah, Amy.
Was it for Doctor Strange's girlfriend or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
It was Butch. Butch did the cover.
It was a
Yeah.
photograph, right? Or it was
Amy Grant.
Amy Grant. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Butch Geist did the cover.
Marvel, like a year or two ago, updated their work for hire agreement because they make you sign one agreement, unlike DC, where you have to sign an agreement for every assignment. They just updated it, and one of the big clauses they had in there is that you do not use any type of likeness from an actor or whatever. Like, they were really doubling down on that, and it kind of made me wonder with all the movie stuff that they were getting into if that was becoming more and more of an issue. Just because I still wonder how the whole Samuel Jackson thing worked into the Ultimates, and he ended up as Nick Fury, like stuff like that. Like,
I think he owes Brian Hitch a little bit of money.
Yeah.
I think satire is the exemption, right? If you do satire, you can do it, right?
Yeah, satire is different.
And Sam Jackson was a huge fan, right? I can't remember the order of how that happened, but he was very flattered.
Yeah, I think it depends on the individual too. If they're troublemakers or they're insulted by it, they still have to instigate it, I believe. So maybe that's why the Sam Jackson thing happened versus some of these other guys. Because I've done like books like for Dark Horse. I was going to do some of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer covers, and some of those actors, because you have to audition for them, so you have to do likenesses, and then they have to sign off. And then, when you actually get the job, if you get past that audition period, then they still get to, have a say in things. And Michelle Gellar, she's a little hard to deal with. Yeah. Because she has a little bit of I think it's cute, but there's kind of, she's got an,
you gotta get that nose. It's like that, J. Scott Campbell nose.
Yeah, but she didn't like it. Maybe I exaggerate, but that's where some of the caricaturing comes in too, and she didn't like it. So I think I tried 3 times, and then I just bowed out. I was just like, no, I'm not going to do it. Yeah.
Well, on the other side of the coin, working for Stallone was easy as pie. When I did Expendables Go to Hell, he actually owns the rights to all the actors' faces that appear in the Expendables. So I didn't have to get approval for, Dolph Lundgren or Jason Statham or anything like that. And then, so, there was none of that. And as far as drawing Sly himself, he's pretty easy to draw. He's almost like a caricature himself.
Yeah.
I had absolutely no beef whatsoever on that project. I was so happy.
Is the book out? Is the book shipped already?
The book is being printed right now.
Being printed. Okay.
Oh, this is a book being done. Oh, okay.
I did it 2 years ago.
Yeah, your stuff looked great, Graham. You could tell, and that's what really matters, is that you could tell that it's the actor, and it's consistent within that book, that reality.
Well, the actor owns the project, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Sylvester Stallone owns the deal, right?
Yeah, he owns the whole.
Yeah, he
IP.
owns the Expendables. Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting. I only took one assignment like this where I had to do a likeness or whatever, and it was for the TV show called Farscape, which the Henson Company owned. So I had double whammies on that. I had to get them to sign off on the alien prosthetic likeness, and then I had the actors have to sign off. So it was like whoa, that's a lot of approvals. Other than that, I just did licensing work. I steered clear of
Is that a telegraphics job?
It went through the Kubert school, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because that was my first professional gig, was doing the Farscape sketch cover or sketch cards for telegraphics, and it was my first gig. Joe helped me out and he gave it to me, and just to show you, like, I mean, again, I was the second year, I wasn't really that great, and I can admit this, I could have done better. But I remember Joe walking the cards back to me, and he was just like, "Do these again."
Yeah.
Well,
he was like, "You could do better on these," and I was like, "Yes."
For the viewers who don't know what telegraphics was, it was a department right at the school that
they did the PS magazine and all that stuff. Like magazine. Basically, yeah. Yeah. He seemed to want to take these gigs just to have work for students that were hanging around trying to get work at DC Comics and Marvel, because back then, I know today the standards are a lot different, but back then it was really hard to get an assignment because there really weren't many fill-in issues. Some of the fill-in issues I had on Robin and stuff, like I would do them and it would take 6 months to print. Like when this was back, well, for me, it was back when Carlin was editor-in-chief, and he kept, everybody ahead on schedule. There also wasn't the trade market wasn't a thing. So it was just really hard to find odds and ends work to get in the industry because, one, your art had to be up to snuff, but two, you proving that you could handle a deadline. I remember getting an inventory story by DC Comics and stuff, and Joe would talk to me. He's like, "Okay, let me look at what you're taking to DC," and he's like, "All right." And then the day after I would go up to DC, he'd ask me, come back in his office. He's like, "Okay, what did they say to you? How did they look at you?" And I remember one of my first assignments, Joe wanted to look over my roughs, and I remember him getting mad. Not at me, but at the script, because it was just Robin and this character Spoiler just sitting on a rooftop talking for 7 pages. But Joe didn't know that, so he's like, "What's page 1?" He's like, "Okay, these are good layouts. Change this, change that." And he goes to the next page. He's like, "Okay, what's?" And it's like, "Well, this is still happening, Joe. They're just sitting there talking." And by the 3rd or 4th page, he got mad and just started swearing. And he was like, "What are they doing up there? These characters are just sitting around talking for 5, 6 pages." And I'm like, "Joe, it's the script. What do you want me to do?" And he goes, "Just pull the camera out and draw pigeons flying by." I'm not even making it up. He was so frustrated. And he's like, "This is the comics they're making today. They're just sitting around talking." And I'm like, "Yes, Joe." I'm like, "I can't rewrite the script." And he's like, "Well, you need to draw some pigeons." And
I've done that.
Good advice there.
That's funny. That's funny.
But imagine the conversation in the book being so boring that it's like, let's just draw some animals. And from there, I started noticing Joe would do that. He would always have foreground animals and things to try to show the environment and stuff like that. And then I start trying to do that in a lot of other books I did. I pulled that trick out on some Green Lantern stuff when Hal Jordan was flying in the desert. I'd draw a turtle on the ground or something like that. It's like techniques like that I never thought of until, working around Joe, why he was doing some of the things in the comics he was doing, trying to get the idea of environment. He was really into environment. If you could get climate, rain, snow, any of that stuff into a comic, that was his thing.
Yeah, I remember that when Joe worked with Chuck Dixon, Joe requested Chuck to put a lot of snow and a lot of organic stuff on this Punisher story that I think you showed thumbnails for, but Patrick shared the thumbnails of the Punisher story. The first thumbnails was by Chuck Dixon. And Chuck asked, Joe if he wanted to give any input, and said, "Just give me a lot of snow, give me some a lot of organic stuff," and Chuck gave it to him.
I'll tell you, organic material like trees and rocks and stuff it's a lot more fun to ink, right. Because especially with the brush. I was working with, I think it was Adam Kubert on one of the exports or something. And so he just kind of did this just side of pencil stuff, and it was raining. So it was just black, it's kind of old school with just like, it's just kind of a feather coming out of the black, but it's rain. And then there's streaks of rain coming through that. And so I was like, because this isn't really how he draws. He doesn't really draw like this. And I said, how do you want me to ink this? He said, I want you to ink it like Joe Kubert would. And I was like, oh, okay. So as soon as he said that, I was like, I had permission to kind of get out the brush, you know what I mean? And kind of just start pulling out and just kind of being sloppy with the backgrounds. And it was very liberating. And it's fun sometimes when people go, oh, ink it like this. And then you go, oh, it gives you an excuse to look at old Joe Kubert books or whatever, you know what I mean? Like to do the research. And
there goes a whole day.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
A rabbit hole.
But with that being said, because of that, what you said of liberating, Joe always taught us to get the essence of the drawing without being caught up in details and a lot of information to begin with. So, and encourage everyone to ink their own work, because if you going to ink it, you can be loose, and then you draw with your inks, and it all becomes natural, and you break away from that static, stiff, locked in, tight pencils. And if you look at the pages that we shared here on Tarzan, Joe inked over blue pencil lines, very loose blue pencil lines, because that allowed him to not be locked in with redrawing the same thing over and over again.
But keeps it fresh and keeps the energy of those layouts, which is the key of everything. We started the show with the question, what words of wisdom did Joe ask you that you took with you? And for me, one of the things was insist on inking your work.
Yeah.
That's what he told me. Insist on inking your work. And a little harder, easier said than done when you had the assembly line processes of Marvel and DC, especially when you're first starting out. But I've always kept that in the back of my mind. And then when I got to the point where I could insist on it, I've never looked back.
Well, to that point, like I've inked people that like pencils that the penciler didn't know how to ink. And it was very apparent because it doesn't happen organically. Like you can't really ink it the way it's penciled. And so I used to always say, like, I think it's good, even if you're not a good inker, to ink your own pencils, because then you kind of see how it gets interpreted by an inker, especially if it is an assembly line and it's out of your control. So even if you're not really proficient at it, at least you know how the tools work. So then when you pencil it, the inker can emulate what you're doing better and more organically.
Joe had a way of making me feel really bad about everything I did. But he said kind of the same thing. It was on one of the first assignments I turned in, and he knew. He was like, "Can you ink it?" And I'm like, "No, they don't trust me to ink it, Joe. I'm lucky to be penciling this." And he's like, okay, just let it go. And then the inks didn't come out all that great. And Joe then brought that up, and he's like, you should have inked it yourself. I'm like, I know, but they wouldn't let me ink myself. And he's like, what did he say? He goes, it's bad enough that you have to accept your mistakes. Don't accept somebody else's mistakes. I was like,
that was worth writing down.
Yeah. And that stuck with me my whole life, not just in drawing, but like in anything.
Yeah. Those are words of iron right there.
Yeah, I was like, wow, Joe, I feel really bad. Thank you. But I mean, it was good advice, but it's like, if his attitude is, if you can control the situation, he also, another thing that stuck with me when working with writers is he said, never take away a panel, but add a panel if you can. Because to never subtract a panel from the page, but you can add panels to the page. I don't know where
depends.
that came from.
That depends because
I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah.
because sometimes when I did Deathstroke under Marv Wolfman, and I think it's safe to say that now, but I met him at the San Diego, and he was thanking me for doing the pages not so cluttered as the previous guy who did Deathstroke under his scripts. I didn't tell him anything. I just thanked him. But the reason why was that when I got the script, he would have 9 panels in a page. and I would call the editor and said, "Can I combine some action and make less panels in this page?" I said, "Sure, yeah, go ahead." And Marv loved it because I knew what he wanted, and I could do it with less panels. And he was so happy that he complimented me for doing the pages less cluttered. But that's because I subtracted some panels.
I think Joe worked with very loose writers because he was looking at scripts I was getting sometimes. This was when I was first getting into comics. And he was like, his attitude was he got nothing like that when he was working on Sergeant Rock and stuff. Like it was very loose scripts and very basic actions. And I kind of wonder, like, Joe, I feel like Joe probably had a different experience. I think from everybody else working in comics, especially being a legend and everything. Because I remember talking to Will Dennis about working on the Azzarello Sergeant Rock graphic novel. And I was like, hey, how is it editing that? And he just looked at me with a pale face. And he's like, I don't do anything. Like Joe just turns it in. And Joe, it was interesting. Joe was correcting Azzarello on ranks of soldiers and things like this. Like I think Joe just kind of, he was a guy that kind of walked in like he was supposed to be the one in charge, kind of. Like, I mean, he was a dominating force. I mean, as a man and a creator.
When he did Batman, imagine if Batman, Kelly, he did a Batman looking, was a black guy and looked like a bat. Remember
it
that?
was the Stan Lee reimagining that whole Stan Lee thing. Yeah.
Yes. And I was able to get copies of the thumbnails of the story from Mike Collin, and I remember, that he would write down, Mike, I don't think we should have any script here, or here. He would just tell Mike what he thought was better to do, and Mike was like, okay, that's fine, So
I think Kubert, like Eisner. One of Eisner's takeaways that I've always kept with me is that once the script goes to the artist, the story is his now. That you are not locked into the suggestions that the writer is putting in. As long as you're true to the story, his art directions are not directions, they're art suggestions. And it's up to you to interpret that into a cohesive visual tale. And I think Joe did the same thing,
Yeah, but it depends, Graham, on how much power and clout you have. And respect from the team, because if my first story drawing Danny O'Neill, I would dare not change whatever he wrote. I said I'm going to do it.
It would be awesome if somebody did that to an Alan Moore script. A 9-panel rigid page, and just went. You know what? Let's bring this down to 3.
Well, I think Dave Gibbons did do that.
And you know how, like, we look back at history and you're like, yeah, the history books say this, or this Joe Kubert's a legend. But it was somebody like Howard Chaykin told me at a convention one time that there was a point in time where there was real debate who was the biggest comic artist at the time, and that was whether it was Neil Adams or Joe Kubert, like just as being fans at the time. And I don't, of course, I wasn't reading comics at that time. I wasn't a kid on the street that partaking in that debate. But
what year was this, Shane?
That Chaykin told me this. I don't know
what year is he referring to.
I have no idea. That's the thing. He was just like, Joe was like, there was a debate amongst fans who was the top comic artist at the time. And to me, that's just always weird, because didn't they even, like, they respected, I mean, those guys liked one another and everything, but didn't they share a studio at one time too?
Who?
Neil Adams and Joe Kubert?
I don't think so, but
I don't think so.
But they Joe always spoke highly of Neil Adams. Because I remember coming to Joe and I came on not really giving Neil Adams too many points in certain things. I forgot what it was, and Joe, and Joe looked at me and said, "He definitely, like Neil knew he knows his stuff." Joe reaffirmed to me that how good Neil was, and I remember that they had always good relationship. It was Neil who first introduced him the PS magazine. It was Neil who took over the Muhammad Ali cover and honored him with the same layout as he did, and a few things that he suggested to the school. Some comic strips that he brought into Joe, and he said he would be good for the school. They always had a good relationship, much better than his relationship with Alex Stoth, which was very debated this week on some Facebook forums. But yeah, but Neil was always with Joe, had a good chemistry together.
Alex was a tough guy. Toth was a tough guy. And I remember Joe talking about the time that Alex changed. You want to talk about changing the story. It's one thing when the artist, tells this writer's story, but does it his way. Toth changed the story. And
I think I heard this. Yeah.
Joe was furious, and it took him forever to get it done. And he says, I can't print this. And because he didn't print it is why Toth never spoke to him again.
I heard that story, but when I heard it, I heard that Toth added extra pages to it.
Added a page. He made it an additional page longer, and it didn't fit. And they had advertising.
Is that what it was? He added a page too? Yeah.
Well, apparently it wasn't the first time. It was like, look, it was like I'm going to give you one more chance kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Take a look at Facebook. There's a debate going on by all those letters that Alex Stoth sent to a creator.
Those things were like crazy. The lettering on it is so small and precise.
He was bitter from that story. He ripped Joe in school, and he didn't think highly of Tarzan. It was tough, but that's because they had this thing going on, and Joe thought he was taking advantage of his friendship because they knew each other for a long time.
Right.
And Joe had just gotten the authority to be an editor. So Joe had the power all of a sudden to call the shots on his friend Alex Stowe, who thought of himself good enough as much as Joe, and there was some kind of tension that Alex pressed the wrong buttons at Joe, and we all know if we ever had Joe as an instructor or work relationship, Joe knows what he wants. And he understands what he requires of you. If you don't give it, man, he's gonna let you know.
At one time working for him, I actually I mean, maybe I was like taking it back to redo it. I was having it because everything revolved around Joe's table when you worked for Joe. Joe never really moved around. Like everybody moved around Joe, and he was never far from his table. That was the thing. So, I'd go down.
Goodfellas.
Yeah. Well, you go to his office and there's that big stretch table, but then there's his drafting table in the corner, and he's always there. And I remember pulling something back. I had to just redo everything. And I probably caught Joe at a bad time and whatever, because he's always working on 4 or 5 things, it looked like, at his desk.
Yeah.
And I was just like, he's just stubborn. I was young and I was cocky. I'm like, he's just stubborn. And then I'm like, and then I look back and I fixed it and I did what I was supposed to do and everything. But I just remember being a young kid saying that to myself. And I look back and I'm like, he wasn't stubborn. He knew what he was doing. And that was the thing is like, it was just wisdom. He had been there. He had done that. This is the way to do it. not your way. This is work. But it wasn't even so much. It was his way of doing it. He knew this is the way to do it for the military, that they're okay and they're not going to make us redo this, because everything still had to go through approvals through the PS magazine. Because I remember I had a tank flying over a ledge like it was going so quick and dynamic, and he's like, well, you can try it, we'll see what they do. And then lo and behold, I'm having to redo it because the military's like, yeah, we don't want people driving vehicles that fast, they'll break. Like Joe knew, like he was like, yeah, you'll learn, you'll just have to redo it, so
from one side, Joe was very he was adapting to the Italians on attacks. But when it came to certain things that he knew what he wanted, he was very firm. For example, when we did the 9/11 tribute for the Twin Towers for DC, I remember I was part of it too, and we all had to submit our layouts to the editorial before they approved it, and then we would ink it for them to put in that comic book. When it came to Joe, okay, Joe, you can submit your roughs, and I said no. If I'm going to contribute, whatever I do, that's why you're going to use it. Otherwise, I don't want to do it. So he knew the right time to put his foot down on certain things. Same when he did tour for Epic and Marvel. Kevin Summers, and he was one of the assistant editors of the Epic story. And I remember asking him, how is it working with Joe? Interesting. How so? Well, we're on the phone. I'm on the phone with Joe, and I'm telling him this and this and that about the book. And Joe would just say, oh, that's unacceptable. You have to do it this way. It's okay. Okay. So it's like, it's not everybody that is going to be a Joe, you know what I mean? And pull the shots. We can try. I remember I tried that with another one time in my career. That said, oh, I'm not happy with this inker. And the editor said, are you quitting?
Is that when you started doing the faces in Azrael? You started inking the faces?
Oh my goodness. You caught me.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, because the faces looked really good, and then everything else looked good, but the faces were like really good. I remember you doing it in class.
Yeah, I was a dilemma because I grew up thinking the way Joe does as far as inking herself since I was a kid. So I always was a pain in the butt to editors and asking, can I ink? Ask Chuck, at CrossGen, I busted Buzz Sears and Andy Smith. Can I ink my own story? I kept on pushing that envelope. I kept on doing it. And I finally got into it. And I like Graham, I never went back. So I don't take jobs that I don't ink myself. Because I think the way Joe thinks as far as that. But I understand it's tough. I mean, it's easy for Joe to say to Adam and Andy, ink your own work. But it's hard to maintain a monthly deadline and to keep the amount of information that it worked too hard to produce in a month. And you can't expect to have Joe's mind that knocks thumbnails 3 or 4 books simultaneously and do a cover and runs a school and do comic strips, you know what I mean? You can't
but it also is about the style that was developed. Joe's style is about speed and energy.
Yeah.
Same way that Kirby's was, because these guys were deadline guys. I mean, they got paid maybe $30 a page, $40 a page to pencil something. So they only made money to support their family by volume. And so they needed speed. They had to churn these pages out to make a living. I remember JRJR was telling me how John Buscema came up to him and said, how many pages you pencil a day? And he said, 2. And he says, well, if you're not penciling 5, throw away the fucking eraser.
John was another master.
And he got that from Kirby.
Right.
said the same thing to him. You know, if you're not doing 5 pages a day.
That because I asked John Buscema himself when I saw him at Marvel Bullpen. I said I went up to him and I saw that guy. John Buscema is here, man. I'm gonna go talk to him, and I praise him and all that, you know. And he looked at me and said, "I just copied Jack Kirby." Mm-hmm. And he actually didn't, but I know what he meant. But John Buscema could do what Romita Sr. could not do.
Right.
Produce effortlessly pages and pages a day. You know, John Romita told me that he preferred the art director job because he felt, I didn't feel the pressure of having to produce a page a day or 2 pages for Spider-Man. He really worked hard to produce. And John Buscema would just, you know, but John did a lot of layouts as opposed to pencils. He produced a lot of layouts for people to finish. When you see all the Coleman's stories, they all look different because they were based on John Buscema's layouts.
Yeah.
But also John Buscema didn't have the passion that Joe Kubert did for his drawings. John Buscema would have this mindset that when I give my pencils or layouts to somebody, it's not mine anymore. So
right. Talk a real quick story I have with Joe though. It's very oddball story, has nothing to do with drawing. I was a 3rd-year student when 9/11 happened, and Mike Chin came up. It was after lunch, and knocked on the door and whispered to Joe, and then Joe came back in. And he basically told us, like, you know, one of the towers had been hit. Just, you know, deadpan. Everybody was in shock. He's like, everybody stay calm, you know, sit down and continue. And then a little bit later came another knock on the door, and that's when they taught, you know, the second. And that always sticks with me in a really weird way that, you know, like Joe, for people who don't know, had been in World War II. Drawing war comics. The what? He was in the Korean War. Oh, I'm sorry, the Korean War. My bad. Are you? What? Yeah. I'm mixing up with somebody else. So it was interesting just to hear him tell everybody. Like, it was just one of those life moments. It's like, that's just odd. Like, this is just like, I'll never. Of course, that day is something that, you know, everybody is going to remember, and it had big effects and everything. But to have Joe Kubert tell everybody this news, and it said something about his character, because I mean, it wasn't like, I mean, he was very stable. He wasn't dumbing it down, the situation, what information they knew. Like, we didn't have a TV on or anything, but that was just one of those weird. When I was there in 1982, they had those portables for the animation that was on the, and I don't remember if it was Mike Chen or somebody else came in really upset and announced that Wally Wood just killed himself. They just found out that he shot himself. Never forget that.
Wow. Just to jump back real quick on Shane's story about 9/11. The following year, you know, I was at the school, and there was like a moment of silence that we were doing for 9/11, and Mike Channon went around and told everyone, all the teachers, you know, at this time we're going to be silent for, you know, 15 minutes, whatever it was. And Irwin was doing a lecture down the hall, and Irwin forgot about the moment of silence. And he was showing a diagram of a man shooting another man, and everything is super quiet, and you hear Irwin go, "Smile, you son of a bitch." And it's like he forgot that we were doing a moment of silence for 9/11. But it echoed in the halls. It was like we were all quiet for about like 2 or 3 minutes, and you just hear Irwin just scream, "Smile, you son of a bitch."
That's how to make it to the movie.
So I heard about this story. Maybe Sergio, you told me this story that they were in the teacher's room. Yes, you told me this story. They were in the teacher's room, and Irwin and High Eisman. Irwin had a fart machine, and Joe was in eating lunch, and you said Joe got mad and walked out. and they thought they were laughing with this fart machine.
But you know, Joe loved Irving.
Oh yeah,
no, I know.
Yeah, they would have a lot of fun. I would sit. So I taught there twice a week, but I always wanted to have lunch with them because they would talk forever. Joe across from Irwin, and then Jose Delbo sometimes would be there. Hi, Eisman.
Hi, Eisman.
Yeah, and Joe would laugh so hard with Irwin's stories. They had a long journey together. You know, traveling, driving together, and so they have a great relationship. But I know, talking about war story, when Joe drew the facts from Sarajevo story. The main character of the book, when Joe told him, because he was friends with the family. He was doing Abraham Stone, the comic book. Remember Abraham Stone?
Mm-hmm.
It was for the same guy. And then the war broke out, and they had to move, and he lost 14,000 pages of stories including some of Joe's pages. And Joe visited them at their new home, and Joe was so touched by the war and all the faxes that he would get from him, that he told him, "I'm going to do a comic book on your story." And he said, "Joe, I don't want you to. I don't want to be going back to the memories that we went through." And Joe simply told him, "I don't care if you don't want me to. I'm going to.
It's unacceptable."
Yeah, it's unacceptable. I'm going. And then the guy says that his daughter was yelling at him, said, "Daddy, don't argue with Joe. It's his book, not yours."
Mm-hmm.
So Joe was very sensitive about war and about stories that touched him, and he didn't care who would buy it or not. He did it with a passion because he wanted to.
Irwin was in World War II, correct?
Huh?
I said Irwin was in World War II, correct? Irwin Hazen?
I would be surprised. I would think he'd be too short.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You know what's funny about, Joe called everyone kiddo because he was older than everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
Irwin would call Joe kiddo, and I thought it was the funniest thing. I was like, it was so cute. He was like, "What's up, kiddo?"
Irwin was a character. He was my basic drawing teacher.
Uh-huh.
I remember one time that he grabbed this big newspaper, and then he would talk I'm gonna talk about gesture drawing, and then he would pose for us right on the platform. So he grabbed this huge newspaper and he opened the newspaper and draw me reading the newspaper, and all we saw was a newspaper. It disappeared behind the newspaper. The newspaper was so big and that we couldn't see him. And the whole class was laughing and drawing the newspaper with the little hands holding it, because.
But he should have showed you how to use a Xerox machine. That was his biggest superpower.
Yeah. Joe
You ever
was
see
really.
his Gandhis? I mean, he just Xerox stuff from 30 years ago and cut it up and pasted it down.
Who did that?
Irwin. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, he was constantly repurposing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more Joe story, and then I'm going to have to crash. But can I tell a quick little? My first year, the summer before I went to the Kubert school, I actually got a job for an independent publisher out of Connecticut. They had several titles, and I was making $10 a page, penciling these pages, and I think I got some 10 pages that summer, maybe like a month before school. And I thought I was going to be able to do both. I thought I was going to be able to do this job and go to school. And I learned very quickly that the workload was going to be too much, and I really didn't want to waste the learning. So I let him know that I wasn't going to be able to continue. And at $10 a page, they threatened me. You know, that this is a small industry, and you'll never work again, kind of thing. And I didn't know anything, and I grew up in up in Maine, and I just didn't have a great understanding of how things work. So somehow the word got to Joe. I don't know if I told him myself or what. But he invited me to his office at the mansion. He had an office right in the mansion, and he came and sat down. I told him what was going on, and he just goes, "Well, you tell them the next time they called it." Was he president of National Cartoon Society, or was he the president at one point?
The Illustration Society.
Not illustration. I think it was cartoonists.
Okay.
But he basically said, if they bother you again, you tell them that or whatever. I think he was president of the National Cartoon Society.
He was, yeah, at the time.
And told you that if they bother you one more time, that we'll get some lawyers after him and stuff. I cannot tell you how awesome, because I mean, I can still be a nervous guy, but back then I just didn't know how things worked and stuff, and I didn't want to have my career torpedoed before it ever got started. And I just felt so awesome that he would,
go to bat for you.
Just really, it was an incredible feeling.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we've been on for 3 hours now. I think we'll wrap it up. It's getting a little late. But I want to thank everybody who came on. Sergio, Patrick, Lee, Shane, Art, Billy, and oh, I'm sorry. I
Walt
mess up your
Simonson.
name all the time, Aaron.
And Walt.
And of course, Walt Simonson too, for coming in and just celebrating, this guy whose work and we all love so dearly. And everybody in the chat. Oh, you guys did me a favor, and everybody in the chat room, thanks so much. We love having you in here, and thanks for tuning in. And Professionals tomorrow night is on Billy's channel, right?
Yeah.
Art?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So the Professionals will be on Billy's channel, and next week I will not have a Storytellers. I'll be in Sin City, Las Vegas.
Oh,
I have a signing event, so I'm going to be there for about a week. So
you're rolling dice.
What's that?
Signing dice? What are you signing event?
Yeah.
If it's gambling, it's Patrick. With
Well, you know what I might do when I'm out there? I'm looking into it now. Is I want to go out in the desert with those machine guns. And
go shoot some guns.
Yeah.
You know what, Graham? My daughter does that in the California desert. She's
Yeah.
got a friend, he's ex-military, and they go up and they just shoot up the dunes.
Yeah. We got these packages. You can do belt-fed 50 cals with an explosive target, so you can.
Awesome.
So I'm definitely going to do that when I'm out there. But so thanks again, everybody. Have a great night,
you, guys.
and we'll catch you tomorrow on
Pleasure.
the Professionals.